So once again, thank you all very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming through to the One Africa Forum African Youth Summit 2024. It is such an honor and a very humbling privilege to be, standing right before you and sharing this very great moment with you. It's a beautiful moment, especially for the continent of Africa. I'm particularly excited because of the reawakening that we are having as young Africans and the commitment we are making to ensure that we chart a way forward for ourselves and for the generations to come. So I want to say thank you to everyone. An exciting moment has really dawned on many countries in Africa, from Nigeria, in the previous election over a year ago, to other events happening from the coups and counter coups happening in many other countries. We have really seen that the landscape, was shaped in the last 24 to 48 months. But in all these, it has never shaken our spirit as Africans and as young Africans. As a matter of fact, in my observation and from what we have seen, it has actually made more Africans resilient. It pushed a lot of thought to, get into researches, understand what was happening in the continent, and also be able to extend our thought. So today I want to call on everyone as we sit together to discuss a very important topic and talk about what the African Union has called for the year today to push on, which is on education. I want to say that every one of us is a key part to unlocking this future that we see. Just a few weeks ago, South Africa had its election, one of the most dynamic elections that has happened on the continent of Africa. For 30 years, the African National Congress has led and won election on landslide victory, except for this previous election, where they fell below 50%. That sent a shock to the spines across many in Africa who observed the elections. An organization that is known as a liberation organization, but the delegate would send, rather, the electorate would send a message to them and say, we need you to wake up. Today, South Africa is now being led by a government of national unity, a government that then includes every member that sits in the parliament, has a say in the government. It is more or less a collaborative government. And for those of you who have followed our events over the years, you will know that over and over again, we have always encouraged collaborations, both within us as an organization and also for those who are outside the organization. Collaboration is a strong key and an element to the future that we see on the continent in Africa. We must collaborate individually and collectively. So I want to encourage everyone to say, as we live here today and talk on education, this year it is education for all African children. The time is now. Now is the time to not just invest in education, but to be actively involved in seeing that this comes to be. Now is the time, as we have always said, to have a curriculum, an Afrocentric curriculum that actually stands us out in the global space. To have a curriculum that is not just borrowed. I want to call on many Africans and many of those who are in the educational space to say, while we do research and understand how other countries have succeeded and thrive, both in their educational sector, technology, and other sectors, let us ensure that we do not leave Africa behind when we write this history. We understand our culture. We understand how we do things as Africans. And it is very beautiful that Africans are doing great things around the world, from the United States to the United Kingdom to Asia to Australia. Africans are leading in the landscape, and it is such a thing of joy. And I want to say kudos to you, all Africans. At this point, I would recognize as many as I can representatives who will be joining us soon, or those who are already here, both from the African Union, from the African Union Youth Division. I want to say welcome. Representatives of high commissioners and head of state who are coming here, who will be here If you are not listening to this right now, when you eventually come through, I want to say welcome, but I also want to call on you and say, as part of those who are decision makers, make conscious decisions that will help us as Africans to move forward. You have been called to serve, and it is a service that you have to render. And therefore, I want to say thank you again to everyone. I want to say welcome. And I may not have a time to give a closing remark, but let me quickly appreciate a few people here. I want to first appreciate our keynote speaker, Dr. Eric Israel Kiri, who is joining us from Kenya. I also want to appreciate William and Ida Jackson. You can see them there. A director of One Africa Forum. Mr. William is a director of One Africa Forum, and he's a director in charge of education and technology. I want to say thank you. Cornelia, we call her the networker because she makes things happen. I want to say thank you very much. Within a short notice, you were able to jump in and make a lot of things happen. Thank you so much. And every other director on One Africa Forum, I want to say thank you. And lastly, let me extend my sincere appreciation to Barrister Abies. Here you are, Ofoma, who is the senior legal advisor on international relation and partnership to One Africa Forum, for her many strides in ensuring that this program is a success. I want to say thank you very much to you and to every other person. Again, I remain your humble servant, Ambassador Dose Prince Irahon, and I call on everyone that even after this program, let us join hands together and collaborate and build the Africa that we want. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you very much for that wonderful welcoming speech. I really want to appreciate everyone that made this program a success. So we really appreciate your efforts in various ways. Thank you, our host director, for all you've been doing to ensure that this movement, still keeps going. We have in the house our guest speaker, our keynote speaker, Dr. Eric Israel Kireke. We want to give him the floor now for him to talk to us. So, sir, you're highly welcome. Welcome, sir. Okay.
O-K-E-R-E. The extra K is not me, it's another person.
Okay. Yeah, welcome, sir. You're highly welcome, sir. We are really privileged to have you in our midst today.
All right, can I go ahead?
Yes, sir. Please, you can take it.
I want to salute everyone who put together this initiative. I've read the letters you sent to me and tried to study your organization briefly, not as much as I should have, because I've been traveling for the past few days when you began to contact me. Normally, I would have studied the organization from back to front and front to back so I can understand everything. But the little I've read about your organization, I'm impressed that some young people could wake up and make up their mind that Africa must move forward. It is very impressive. If many generations were doing that, by now would have really changed. But many generations were just blaming the previous generation, and we kept on blaming the previous generation up until now. Blame game will not do anything for us. It's better for us to do what we have to do. Even the Bible says we should be wiser than the ancients. What it means is we should be wiser than those who we met on earth. We don't expect those who we met on earth to be wiser than us. Things are improving. Things should be getting better as the generations come. So instead of blaming them, we should put things right. I'm happy that there are people who are putting things right. I want to salute this organization, and I would also want to encourage that you should not allow the fire to die. That's one of the things that happens. People have good initiatives, they make a lot of noise, after a while the fire dies. This fire must not die. Okay, so take it very serious.
All right.
Keep moving it. move it from nation to nation, from place to place, command things to happen, and it will happen. I'll be speaking, but I want to salute you one more time. God bless you. Thank you for inviting me to this forum and giving me the opportunity to be the keynote speaker. I want to thank the young man that spoke at the beginning. Your speech made a lot of sense to me. That was nice of you, sir. May God promote you in Jesus' name. And every other person,
Amen.
salute you. All protocol observed. Now, the topic before me is birthing a new Africa, the way forward, and the role of the youth. Birthing a new Africa, the way forward, and the role of the youth. So I broke it into three. Birthing a new Africa, 1. Segment number 2, the way forward. Segment number 3, the role of the youth. I have to break it that way as a lecturer so that we can have everything the way it should be.
Yeah.
Now, one of the greatest problems of Africa is leadership, deficiency in leadership. There are 2 types of leadership. Number 1, transformational leadership. Number 2, poverty-driven leadership. Now, many people prefer using poverty-driven leadership to rule. Number 1, the main reason is so that they can stay longer in power and enjoy at the detriment of others. There are only few people who believe in transformational leadership, raising others so that their status can also change, and the national status can change, and the status in Africa can change, so that things can be good for all of us. Lives can be transformed to fit into what we are seeing elsewhere. Transformational leadership. But many people believe in poverty-driven leadership, whereby the rich becomes richer and the poor becomes poorer. So in fact, they keep making the poor to remain poor so that they can rule them. In fact, they make the poor to attack each other so that they can keep controlling them and manipulating them. So poverty-driven leadership is manipulative leadership. It makes the poor to remain poor. In fact, it makes the poor to hate the poor and fear the rich. And it makes the rich to remain rich and keep oppressing and manipulating the poor. So the main key there is for us to embrace transformational leadership across Africa. If we can embrace transformational leadership across Africa, Africa will be great. Africa is already great by the things God had invested in Africa. But transformational leadership will make it pay everybody. Look at Dubai. When transformational leadership entered into Dubai, Dubai turned to number 1 tourist attraction. Everybody wants to go to Dubai. Dubai was a desert until leadership came in. It was leadership, transformational leadership, that transformed Dubai to what Dubai is today. Look at Singapore. Singapore was poorer than Nigeria. When Singapore became independent, Nigeria dashed Singapore money because of poverty. They were very poor. But transformational leadership took Singapore to where it is now. Singapore is a first world nation. How did he get there? A leader arose and made up his mind that we are transforming the life of everybody here. And he succeeded in it. But the rest nations have poverty-driven leadership. So they oppress people and make them remain poor. They only give them a fish. They don't teach them to fish so that they can remain under control. When you give a man a fish, you control him, because the next day he will come and beg you for fish. The third day he will come and beg you for another fish. So you put him under control. But when you teach a man a fish, he becomes independent from you. So poverty-driven leadership does not want anybody to be independent. They want you to remain under their control forever. May God deliver Africa from poverty-driven leadership.
Amen.
May God deliver Africa from it. Now, birthing a new Africa. There must be a vision for Africa to become a first world. From Cairo to Johannesburg, become a first world. The entire African continent become a first world. Now, I'm happy that this movement encompasses all Africa. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
And so Africa must become a first world. So the vision for Africa to become a first world must be birthed. Number 2, the vision of continent-wide enlightenment campaign. One of the greatest problems in Africa is ignorance. And many ignorant people are in power. Many ignorant people are sitting in powerful positions. Since they are ignorant, they keep perpetrating what made others fail. They keep making sure it is there. So we need to do a continent-wide enlightenment campaign so that people can know what they should know and now get to where they ought to get to if we want a new Africa. Number 3, the vision of better life for all in Africa. Better life for all in 3 basic ways. Number 1, food. 2, clothing. 3, shelter. If those 3 things are handled, Africa will move to another level. If there's enough food to eat, there's no famine, there's no drought, to the extent that even when there is drought, we have enough to eat, enough in store. Clothing. Africans are well clothed. We don't have people who are living in, wearing banners and dressed shabbily and all that, and, living an abnormal life. Number 3, shelter. When shelter is in place and there are houses everywhere and there are no people living under the bridge, nobody living in shacks and in places that in dustbins and in slums, then Africa is moving forward. So to birth a new Africa, there must be a vision for better life for all in Africa in those 3 basic areas. Number 4, the vision for transformational leadership in Africa, which I've spoken about when I began, instead of poverty-driven leadership. Number 5, the vision of success with generational successors in succession. I repeat, the vision of success with generational successors in succession. What do I mean by that? We must have a vision to raise those we must have a vision to succeed, 1, and then raise others that will be successful after us and raise others after them. That's what I mean by in succession. Success should not be only when you are there, you succeed. People are clapping for you. As soon as you leave there, everybody fails. Then you say, see, I'm very good. When I was there, everything was working well. When I was not there, everything has failed. You are a failure. Many people pride in that. When our government was in place, everything was working well. There was transport, but now they removed us. See, they are all suffering. They are begging. It is because you failed. Every success without a successor is a failure. So we must create success with generational successors in succession. Transgenerational success. As this government comes, it does better than this former one. The next one that comes adds more value to what this one has done. The next one that comes adds more value to what this other one has done, and they keep moving that way. That is what will change Africa. Success with successors in succession. Africa will change. Those are 5 things that we could put in view as we birth a new Africa. I want to ask a question. Are you hearing me? Are you understanding what I'm talking about? I want to hear your voice. Am I with the right set of people? No, I'm not hearing you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We are hearing you.
Okay, I needed that feedback so that I will not just be downloading and I'll be thinking I'm making noise.
No, doctor, you're hitting it right.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. So with those 5 points, we can birth a new Africa in this movement. That's why I warned ahead. Make sure this movement does not die. I don't mind hosting you guys physically in Nairobi. Gather youth and they will hear. When they hear word, you see them move and change things around the world. And we begin to move from nation to nation.
Yes.
I don't mind hosting you up in Kenya, moving you to Uganda, to campuses, go to universities, locate people that will listen and move. Because if we keep blaming those who came after us, we are fools.
Seriously.
So we stop blaming those who came. They only did what was in their brain. That's the extent of the wisdom they had. If we have better wisdom, Let them give us chance. When we get there, we don't blame them. We take it to another level. That's why I talked about success. With successors in succession. All right, let's go. Now, let me go to the second segment, the way forward. Number one, develop anti-dependency mindset among young people. Anti-dependency, spirit of begging, spirit of looking for aid from America, from one this and that one. It has made us slaves up until today. We need to develop anti-dependency mindset among ourselves. Anyone that is going to speak in this One African Forum must drive that point in. We don't want to be beggars. We don't want to be living on what America ate to remain, and that's us. No, no. We have enough in Africa to become who we ought to be. As long as we are dependent on someone, we will have to dance to their tune, because he who pays the piper dictates the tune. Enough of dancing to the tune of somebody who gave us leftover bread to eat. There's enough bread in Africa. So
more than enough.
We need to ask ourselves, why are we born? Why are we in Africa? I am not angry that they gave birth to me in Africa. That is why you see me travel. I've been to 71 countries. I travel. When I speak everywhere, catch fire, because I have discovered that if God discovered that it will not be good for me to be born in Africa, he would have given birth to me elsewhere. I didn't dictate where I was born. I found myself here and I'm happy I'm here. It was not an error that I came to Africa. I came to correct what was wrong. I am not the one to amplify the problem. I came as the solution dispenser. Therefore, let us speak to develop anti-dependency mindset. We don't want to depend on anybody anymore. We have what it takes. We have people that their heads are correct in Africa. We have great geniuses in Africa. Let us utilize the resources that we have. The way forward, number two, discover the resources available to Africa. Discover the resources that we have in Africa. There are many resources in Africa. That is the reason why they partitioned Africa. Europe and other nations came to collect Africa as their hamburger and put Africa in their pocket. Francophone nations took over. Spain took over. Portuguese speaking took over some people. English speaking, they shared us like meat pie. Why? Because of the resources. It is time for us to sit back and discover what we have in Africa and start using what we have to get what we need. It is time for us to discover what is available. So we need a set of youth that their duty will be discovery, research and discovery of what is in Africa that can make Africa a first world. I am not telling you what I've not done. I'm doing it. Things I've discovered. That this building you see behind me, I came here to do master's degree and I built it to change lives. It's called World Changers. It's that building behind me is there physically here, not in film. It's physically here. I'm speaking in it. I came to do master's here and I made up my mind. I will never be a beggar. I will not be a meager brain. I will not have done master's degree and PhD and be laid back. Let's discover the resources available to us so we stop being beggars. Right. Let there be some young people that will rise. Their duties, research and discovery of the resources in Africa available to Africans for Africans that will move Africa forward. Number three. Before I get to number three, let me see. I hope you know we have potentials. We have talents. We have brains. We have mineral resources. We have land in Africa. We have seas. We have oceans. We have space. We have human resources. Africa can succeed. We can succeed in a serious way. We can succeed more than the first world because we have much more than the resources that they have. Number three, develop the resources available in Africa into industries, factories, and mass production of solution instead of amplification of problem. Develop the resources available in Africa into industries, factories, where we mass produce solutions instead of amplifying problems. What we have can create factories in Africa that all Africans will be employed in. Industry that all Africans will be employed in. In fact, we'll be importing people from other nations to come and work for us. what we have. If we can settle down to develop the resources, it will take us to that level. Number 4, deploy the human resources bestowed in Africa. Deploy them, hire Africans, buy from Africans, patronize Africans, promote Africans, elevate Africans, and own Africans, Africa will succeed. But when we betray Africa and we refuse to stand in solidarity with Africa, Africa will fail. Therefore, we need to deploy the human resources that God has blessed Africa with. I have met quite a lot of people. There's an organization in America called Gardens, Global African Diaspora Movement and all that. They said they want to gather wealth from America and come back to bless Africa. I have met major human beings in Oklahoma. I traveled to Oklahoma to speak, and I met them. People from African origin who have made it in life. They want to bless Africa back. If we have such men who have that kind of mindset, then Africa will move forward. And they are putting themselves together. They said they want to affect Africa back. I went there to speak. See, Africa can succeed if we have such kind of mindset. Now, they said when they came to Africa, they met people who put the money in the pockets and disappeared. So they came to Nairobi to have a conference, and they asked me, can you get us reliable people that we can say, build bridges? Your duty is to be building bridges, and the person will build the bridge, not put the money in his pocket and be laughing, and people are still trekking up. Therefore, we need human resources. All the human resources that we have and have developed should not be galvanized to have the spirit of anti-poverty, anti-dependence. So we stop using poverty to oppress people. We now get into transformational leadership that will move Africa forward. Number 5, devolve the wisdom and ideas that sustain growth and development. Devolve it, share it. This wisdom is one-sided. There are people that do not have access to it. If this wisdom and ideas can be shared among us in Africa as we move from place to place and lead Africa, lead the minds of people, and each person embraces this by, through enlightenment, I'm telling you, Africa will change in less than 5 years. Because most young people in different African nations are tired of what is going on. Tired of kidnapping, tired of all kinds of gruesome killing around, tired of banditry, tired of being used as slaves. We are tired. That's why I told you this one for African forum must not die. Push it to the next level. We need education, exposure, number 2, enlightenment, number 3, experimentation, number 4, experience, number 5, excellence, number 6, exportation. We now export our ideas. So this should be all encompassing. Thank God that African Union is part of what you are trailing in this movement. I speak for African Union also. It's part of what they are trailing. I speak for African Union. I was there in the last African Union meeting, the summit. I was there to open the meeting with prayers myself and Obasanjo, Olusegun Obasanjo. Now, the truth is, if this idea can spread around Africa, give Africa 5 years. That is where one nation cannot do it alone. All of us should put together. And you see Africa move forward. You see Africa succeed. You see Africa hit the hammer on the nail, hit the road running, and things will be transformed in this nation. From Cairo to Johannesburg, from Johannesburg down to the topmost part of Africa, everything will be transformed completely. All right, let me go to the 3rd segment. Segment number 3. I hope I'm doing good with time. I don't want to finish your time. I want to deliver. Number 3, the role of the youth. Number 1, the first thing under the role of this, passion for this vision. Passion for transformational leadership. Passion for a first world Africa. Passion for the vision to enlighten Africa. Passion for better life for Africans in the area of food, clothing, and shelter. Passion for educating Africans, because education is power. If not for education, there are places I will not have been able to enter. Education had opened my doors. Passion for success with generational successors in succession. When the youth have this passion, my God, Africa will change. Give us 5 years. If one African forum moves to this level and we pack the stadium full, physical, and speak to everybody in different nations, forget it. Give us 5 years, Africa will change. Africa will become a home for everybody. Nobody will run away from Africa anymore. All this jackpot syndrome, you run to Europe, run to this and that one, it will not happen. People will run into Africa because Africa have all it takes to feed the world. So I have discovered that passion persuades, passion persists, passion prevails, passion invades, passion performs, passion pushes, passion pulls, passion intoxicates, and passion projects. If the youth can catch the spirit of passion, the vision will work. Number 2, transmission of vision. The youth should carry the project of transmitting this vision to others as their major job. A vision not transmittable is a vision truncated. A vision that is not transmittable is a vision terminated. Transmission by all means, transmission through social media until everyone hears, every death sees, and everybody knows. When this vision is transmitted with passion, then the change you are looking for is just by the door. Number 3, the third thing the youth should do is implementation of this vision. In Kenya, in the last election, many young people became leaders. Some of them are right here in our church. I'm their pastor. I put fire in them to know what to say, tell them what to do, and they go there to do it, turning things the right side up. Implementation of the vision. Every good intention without corresponding good action leads to frustration. There must be corresponding good action for every good intention. Action speaks louder than voice, the people have said. Therefore, let there be action taken to make things work by the youth. We will not blame those who came ahead of us, as of now some of them are too weak to take the action. Therefore, we, the young people of this generation, are to take the action. Action commands respect. People hate storytellers. Everybody respects those who take action. Action commands attention. Action commands honor. In fact, action instills discipline. Action attracts wealth. Action attracts even more wealth. Therefore, let the youth be the one pushing and taking action. Implementation of the vision of transformational leadership. Number 4, the duty of the youth, the role of the youth. Creation of sustainable platforms for the vision to flourish transgenerationally. One of the things that happened in America is their vision is transgenerational. United Kingdom, their vision is transgenerational. That's why the fact that they are having all kinds of attacks, but they have some legacy that you cannot take away from them. It has moved from generation to generation. If our vision can be transgenerational and we create a sustainable platform for it to run, then we have succeeded in life. We must capture the vision. We must cultivate the vision. We must systemize the vision, turn the vision to a system. We must also monetize the vision so that we are not bankrupt and poor. The reason why Marcus Garvey's movement died was poverty was part of it. Bob Marley's movement died because poverty was part of it. He did not know how to monetize the vision. After systemizing the vision, we monetize it. And then we program it to run on its own so that many years after we have left the scene and left this world, the vision is still making Africa a first world. Number 5, replication and revision of the vision. Lack of revision of vision brings division. I repeat, lack of revision of vision brings division. Because as things are changing, you need to revise the vision and update it. Because in life, when you are not updated, you become outdated. The reason why there are division in many countries is because the vision became expired and no inspiration came back into it. Nobody revised it. So the vision took place. So everybody now begins to run different visions. Division is divided vision. Division, vision that is divided. So vision needs to be revised. That is the reason why we need this meeting regularly. That is the reason why we need to enlighten people, so that the vision will not be divided because of no revision. There must be updates to forestall outdates. Because when you're not updated, we become outdated in life. Again, we must fertilize the vision over and over again. Because there will be attackers of the vision. When a new vision comes, enemies also come. But when we keep fertilizing the vision, the enemies will turn to manure very soon. That is the truth. I have practiced what I'm trying to say. When you stand firm with the vision, your enemies will become fertilizers to the vision. Yes. Because I've discovered that there's no roadblock to a dustbin. It's only to important places that you see roadblocks. Whenever I start seeing roadblocks, there's an important place ahead. But to a dustbin, there's no roadblock. So when people do not attack your vision is a nightmare. is a bad dream. We must replicate the vision by socialization. We must replicate the vision by acculturation, making it become a culture, especially excellence, making excellence a culture in Africa, making transformational leadership a culture in Africa. I'm telling you, if we replicate it by socialization and by acculturation, Africa will succeed. I want to close by going back and telling you that education cannot be overemphasized. Education will open your mind, despite the fact that there are things you study in school that you don't need. True or false? There are things you study that you don't need. But it will stretch your mind to accommodate what you need. I'm talking from experience. It will stretch your mind to now become a penchant of knowledge. When you become a penchant of knowledge, you'll be uncommonly useful till the day you leave this world. Therefore, let us push for education. Everyone that is leading this movement, don't joke with your educational career, so that when you speak, everybody sits down to hear. There was a time when people speak, say, who is he? Where did he go? But when they hear this one is well learned, people will listen, especially when you now have quality information added beyond education. But education would have stretched your mind to accommodate all that. Therefore, let us not push down, push it to the background. Let's take education serious, and then our vision of transformational leadership, not poverty-driven leadership, transformational leadership. Remember, we must run it as a vision from generation, success with generational successors in succession. Africa will change. Africa will become a place where everybody will envy for the rest of their life, no matter the continent they came from. After all, their continent was also primitive before they worked on it. If they could work on their continent, we can also work on our continent. The ball is in our court. I hereby close with this statement. The Lord bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. We really appreciate, and I'm sure we have all heard it. And my God, I was taking time to really digest a lot of, the wonderful insights we are bringing, and I just trust that God will help us to really work with it. They are really very, very powerful. Thank you very much, sir. We really appreciate this wonderful talk. And to everyone in the house, I hope we have all heard it. You know, it's one thing to hear, it's another thing to put into action. So I really want to appreciate that talk. Thank you so much, sir. So well, before we move on to before we invite the next speaker, I don't know if anybody has anything to say or anything to add, a form of contribution or something that you just think we need to hear. So please, I don't know, the floor is open to anyone that want to, if you have
Thank you.
anything you want to say.
In case anybody have a question, I'm available. My time still remains a little. You can ask me questions, I'm ready to answer.
Yes. So please, the floor is open. If you have any question or any area of contribution or any area of clarity you just want to, or insight you want to share, the floor is open.
Well, I'm Afame Funagbako. I want to first of all commend the last speaker. Doctor, you've kept me at the edge of on my seat. Your delivery is exceptional, practical, not theory. You could see passion in the delivery. I want to commend you. And I pray that by the grace of God, the Africa of our vision that you have envisioned, we'll always see it, and our children will inherit it. Thank you very much. I want to also ask, what do you think, Doctor, is the greatest challenge to advancing education as regards to the topic you just delivered in Africa, especially where we have pockets of violence against Africans like xenophobia? We have the IPOP challenge from the side where I come from. We have agitations. What do you think should be the way out of this?
Thank you. Thank you. What a wonderful question. That's what is going on currently in Africa and around the world, especially in Africa. Yes. Now, with my studies of different nations, I discovered that Great Britain had their own share of civil wars, tribal fights before they became what they are today. Australia, United States of America, until they got to where they are, but they did not relent. They kept on pushing until they became who they are. The solution is this. Let's start from where we are. A certain lady in Kenya called Wangari Maathai, she shared a story and said, the bush caught fire, but a certain bird decided to quench the fire by getting water from the ocean and then pouring it on the little place it can until the fire is quenched. And then other birds and animals asked that animal, your mouth can only carry some little water. The fire is too much. You cannot quench this fire. The bird answered and said, let me quench the one I can. At least if I save one or two trees or one or two as part of the forest, it will still replicate while others are still being burnt. Now, if you also, then the bird told the other animals, if you have found that what I'm doing is productive, join me. If all of us join hand, then the fire will be quenched. But all the fire will be quenched. But since you have not joined me, let me quench the one I can. Now, because of the violence and all the things taking place, there are places where there are no violence. Let us educate the ones we can. It is those ones that will now lead the others. Very soon, they'll be empowered enough to stop the violence. They'll be strong enough to speak and others will respect them. And the violence will go down. And then Africa will be literate by the grace of God. So what we do is let's do the one we can where we are. Say the one in your mouth. See, somebody said, the reason why poverty and problem remains is because those that should speak kept quiet. If those of us who can speak, those of us who can act, start acting, progress have started. Let me use Jesus as an example. If we imagine one man dying for the whole world, it looks impossible, but at least he came to do it. Today, one person per time is getting saved. He has changed the world. He changed the calendar from BC to AD, one man. So if Jesus can do something that's affecting the whole world, then let's do the little we can and keep doing it. Very soon to become contagious, and then it will overrun the entire Africa. Let us not, because of the problems we have, fold our arms. The problem will soon catch up with us and overwhelm us. Let's start proffering the solution that we can. That breath said, let me quench the fire that I can now. Then at least I have saved a bit, the one that I have, I have the power to save. I think I've answered your questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Doctor. Doctor, for the last, I have a discerning spirit. I'm tempted to say that it's as if there's an affinity between you and my father, Bishop David Oyedepo. You speak more like him. I don't know.
Yes, he has laid hands.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's very obvious. It's very obvious. Thank you very much. It's a privilege meeting you on this platform. Thank you. Sharing the platform with you is a privilege, a great privilege.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much,
Any
sir.
other question?
So any other question, please? The floor is still open.
Hi, I'm sorry. This is William Jackson from the United States. Greetings to everyone. I am so sorry that I'm at a conference in Italy right now, but I've been listening to the conversation, and I'm very appreciative of the doctor's time and Dr. Israel taking his time to share his ideas and views. I just wanted to know from his ideas and experiences, how can the educational system across Africa be improved with all the new technology? My wife and I, we try to do as much as we can across Africa virtually with the metaverse and AI, but with him being, as they say, there and in person, what would be a good way to transition or improve the educational system for African students? Because there's so many opportunities not to be missed, and it's important that they somehow change or modify, but I just wanted to get his ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Your question is, how do we use technology to educate Africans?
Yes, sir. How do you use it? And also what needs to be done to the educational system to make it better?
Okay. I lecture in 2 universities as we speak. I create time to go to secondary schools to speak to them. I speak in large forum in many universities around Africa and also outside Africa on different topics, on different matters. I have discovered that technology has entered into Africa, except in the villages where there may not be electricity, where there may not be computer and all that, where there's no internet. But in all cities of Africa, technological education is making progress. I believe that it will trickle down to the grassroots shortly, because most people are now coming to the cities to come and acquire education. Some of them go back and they become like leaders and kings in their villages, while some, majority are taken out of Africa. Some come to America, where you are, some go to United Kingdom and all that. But if all the people that comes to acquire quality education from the city goes back to the village will be transformed in a few minutes, because they'll take the ideas back and set the place up, and they will lecture, they'll teach, they will help those who are there to set up. But technology is entering into the villages gradually, and gradually people are beginning to use iPads, laptops to study, internet and all that. It is trickling down to the minutest areas, but it's not as much as other nations of the world we know. But in the next 5 years, it should have done that. It should have gotten to the appreciable level. then all those who have the vision to make it happen, if they keep pushing, it will surely happen. So it is a welcome stuff. At the beginning, people were resistant because they do not understand what those technologies were all about. Many people have also become addicted to few other things, addicted to their phone, addicted to Facebook, addicted to pornography and all that, which is inimical to Africans. Africans is not part of our culture. So that's why some people resist it. But when we've seen the positive aspect of it, like now I'm using Zoom to talk to people from different countries, when we see the positive aspect of it, then we got to embrace it and pick up the right aspect of it, and then it's trickling down to the villages. So it is a mission very possible. If you have that vision, please come over. It will work because there are people who have understood it, like me. I'm here right in Nairobi and I understand it well. I have spoken in many countries using Zoom and other platforms like this without traveling there. And sometimes I travel to those places and they beam it back into Africa and people watch me speak. So if that is a progress made, then we can continue it and take it a step further and move it to a higher level. It is a mission, very possible, sir. I think I've answered this.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because my wife and I, through our business, try as much as possible to sponsor youth, teens, and young adults to attend technology workshops and technology conferences. And I understand what you're saying about they have to be empowered, but also see the positive uses of technology, but use them across the continent in Africa. I have one more question too, if you don't mind. Can I ask another one?
Yes, yes, you can go ahead, please.
Okay. All right. I am very curious about the African Union and their desire to allow for cross-border travel without visas. And I wanted to get your viewpoint on that, because personally, I think it's a good idea because it can increase trade and it can increase educational opportunities. So what is your opinion about the free access about crossing borders for people to visit different countries in Africa?
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I have sat back to study it because I am affiliated to African Union. I discovered that it's not like it is, you can just pick up your bag and enter into another country. But they want to make the stress of visa to become less. For example, when I wanted to go to Brazil, I was in Brazil last week. I needed to apply 3 weeks earlier before my travel. They needed to do background check of me. In fact, I have been to Brazil 21 years ago. They needed to go and dig out my details to know what I did then. Then, because I'm a Nigerian living in Kenya, they needed to check my background in Nigeria and study everything about me before they finally gave me visa. Now, many times, nations are discriminated against. There was a time I was invited to speak in Mozambique. I was already at the airport when they denied me boarding because I presented a Nigerian passport. So African Union wants to stop all those bottlenecks. Let it be easy for people to move. Get their details, know who they are, let them perform what they need to perform and get out of that country and go back to where they came from. So it could be less cumbersome. Now they've started implementing it in pockets. For example, East Africans can travel around East Africa just with their ID. As long as you have an address in East Africa and you have an ID card, you can move to Tanzania, you can move to Uganda, you can move to Rwanda, and come back to Kenya with your ID because you have an address in East Africa, so we can trace you. Technology, like that you spoke about in your first question, has moved to a level that we can trace you. You cannot disappear. Rwanda allows people to come in, you get your visa at the port of entry. That is what African Union wants to do. So that with minimal detail, we can track you. For example, when you drive in America, I don't need to call you, stop you, know your name. I will only check your plate number. With your plate number, I will know who owns the car. I will know everything about you. So they will want us to move to that level instead of check you, delay you, cancel your flight, spoil your meeting before they give you visa. They want it now to be that with minimal information, you have easy passage to the next country, and so the trade could be easy, information, communication, relationship could be easier and less cumbersome. So it's not that you will just enter a country without them knowing who you are. No, they will need just little information. They can decode who you are. That's what they're trying to make happen. I don't know whether you understood. There was a time Kenya announced that from January 1 this year, there will no more be need for visas to get to Kenya. People will only get ETA. When I checked the content of what ETA, travel document, when I checked it and checked the visa, I saw that it's nearly the same. They just want simple, straightforward form. You fill it with details that we can use to track you in case you are not the right person in the nation. Easy, but they'll allow you in. But when they sense something is wrong with you, they'll pick you up by those little information that you have given to them, since you have an address somewhere where you are domiciled. So it's making travel easy. Not that you just walk into a country and nobody will know you came in there. But I think they are using a nice word by saying that it should be visa-free. It's just a nice word, but the truth is that they will get some little information about you by which they can track you no matter the country you enter. I believe I've answered your questions.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. I have one more, if you don't mind. And because you can tell I'm very passionate about what is happening in Africa, even though I live in the United States.
Yeah.
And I appreciate Prince and his team for all the work that they're doing and allowing me to be a part of this. But as a Black American, I try to share with others the value and importance of Africa and its stability and its freedom. And my wife and I constantly try to find ways that our business can support growth and education across Africa. So we just appreciate the time and opportunity to listen to you and gain your wisdom and information. So we thank you and send blessings to everyone. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Yes,
Wow.
Mr.
Thank
Clinton.
you. Okay.
I saw somebody called
Yeah.
Clinton raising the hand.
Yes, Mr.
Yeah.
Clinton's
Okay.
up.
Okay.
Just before he comes
Yeah.
in, sorry, Mr. Clinton. By the way, Mr. Clinton is our One African Forum coordinator in Cameroon. I'm hoping he will be able to give a good one, and also see networker. I just wanted to highlight that Mr. William Jackson, who asked the question, who you just spoke to, is the Director of Education and Technology in at One Africa Forum.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. Yes, he is in the United States. Him and his wife are doing great things, as you've heard him as well. So that is why you heard some of those questions. I'm sure he wanted to understand how he could play his role well as a Director of Education and Technology. So yes, I'm really looking forward to us all working together. From the point that you did say, the fire will not die. It's a promise that I personally will make to you, and I know that the entire One African Forum team, we call ourselves champions, hold very important to say the fire will not die. Yes, I'm gonna pause here. Hopefully, we'll talk further as well. So I just wanted to put that out there to say the man you spoke to is a part of One Africa Forum, and his question as well was to understand how to come on board fully, in shaping the course of One Africa Forum. Thank you very much, Mr. Clinton, sir.
Yeah. Thank you very much, sir, and good evening to each and everyone here, and hope each and everyone is doing great. So, Dr. Eric, you said something which is amazing, which is something that we, the Africans, or the Africa or the continent, that we have to come together and make good use of our resources. Now, the question is, it is quite true, but there are some people whom, for example, like there are other organizations that they are formed to make Africa a better place. But now, especially on the aspect of maybe phone or whatsoever. Now, in the aspect of that issue where you will have to meet, maybe let's just say you create an organization where it is all about Africa, and we will need resources to support those citizens in your country which maybe they are suffering or whatsoever. Now, we don't want to depend to the European Union, because the European Union do not give something without taking them back, because I know and I've come across. And that is something that you will see when so many organizations that concerns African, they withdraw themselves from the European Union. It tells a lot, because they cannot give something without taking them back. And that is why you see, instead of the person who is in charge to collect something and kill the citizen or kill the Africans, he better allow it. Now, in the process, now we want to depend on our own people. We want to depend on our own resources. Now, the people whom we want them to support us, which are the African people, it is very difficult for them. We want to maybe like pose them a project or maybe the resources that we want to do, we want them to support. It's very, some will even like look at it, will see it's a good project, but they don't have that zeal, which is something that we are all fighting for Africa for a better place. Those, see some of them who still want to look at the side of the European Union because European give them money. So, you know, European are people whom they are ready to disperse money, say what they want, because at the Ministry of Territorial Administration there here in Cameroon, they advised me that they don't want me to collect resources from the European. They don't have good intention. Now the question now is, it's quite good, but now the question now is, if now we want to depend on our own resources, we want to depend on the people who will support us. But when we write the project for them to solicit for funds or maybe for resources, some of them will not even give us. It's not like we don't know how to write the project. It's not like we don't know how to do it. We do it because we know. Okay, let me just use an example here. Let me not take much time, but let me just use a 3 operational strategy that I believe you can really understand. Now, the problem now is the problem in Africa, maybe there's corruption, there is unemployment, there is a lack of education. Now, the main problem which I've just mentioned is education. And if we want to make that education a better place, we have to make sure that resources are available. And if these resources are not available, we will not be able to educate these young people that will be able to know what is right and right, because some of them are very ignorant. So if we don't tell them what is right and what is wrong, they will not be able to know. Then after now, because we know that we cannot do that all alone. Yes, we know that we cannot do that all alone. We have to make sure that we have to collaborate with other organizations that has the same objective like us, so as to achieve this particular project.
So
So
hit the point.
yes, let me just end there, but I think you are really understanding me where I'm going to, because
Your
even our
question
own brothers, my question
is, you want to know
yes,
how to generate resources.
yeah, my question is, you just mentioned here that, yeah, we don't want to depend on the European Union. We want to depend on our own. Now, my question now is, yes, when we want to meet this our own people, the African people, the personalities that are there, which we want them to join us in making Africa a better place. When sometimes you write a project, sometimes you solicit for fund, some will not even support to see, not that they don't know how to write the project or whatsoever, but to make them to understand that we are here to make Africa a better place and not to depend, even though they know that it's not good to depend. So you see now, so I thank you. So that is it.
All right. Because the question was becoming very long. I didn't want to not get confused again. Now, people don't fund what they don't understand. People fund what they understand. When people understand your vision, they will stand with you. The building behind me, I built it when I was doing master's degree. I did not steal money. It was human beings that funded it. Why? My vision was crystal clear. Vision attracts provision. When your vision is wishy-washy, nobody will stand with you. You need a solid vision for every solid human being to give you provision. The stronger your vision, the stronger your provision. The more quality your vision, the more quality your provision. A certain pastor came to me one day and said he wants me to join him and we write proposal to America so they can give us money and we should write there that we are taking care of orphans. I said, I'm not joining him. He now went to another person and they joined together and they wrote and they got some money and they never used it for orphans. So one day I called them, are you orphans? If you keep doing this wickedness, then you will soon become orphans and your children will become one too. It's because of those people who are not using things the right way. That's why they are suspecting you. When your vision is authentic, you will receive authentic provision. I'm speaking from experience. I'm not a beggar, but my vision is authentic. Authentic provision began to come from everywhere. When I was teaching, I talked about systemization of the vision and monetization of the vision. You must get to a level that your vision becomes a system and you monetize that system so that it can produce what you need. I believe some of you will visit Nairobi shortly, so you can see how I'm running the organization here. You visit Nairobi, come and see. Now, I am now presently trying to program the organization I run so that whether I am around or not, it will run on its own. Yes, that's the height. So that transgenerationally to keep running and sorting things out on its own. One day I thought and I preached and I said, the Bible says we should retire at the age of 50, not 65. People shouted in church and I proved it. Retirement age, according to God, is 50. At the age of 50, what you are working for should be working for you. At the age of 50, what you are looking for should be looking for you. So there is a way you could package your vision, and you have already started implementing gradually, and there are results. Everybody will bow to your vision because only results silences insult. The reason why they are insulting is because there's no result. When there are results, there will not be insult. They will follow you. In fact, everybody will be looking for how to connect themselves to your vision and how to be relevant and useful in your vision. But when that vision is not solid and strong, everybody will run away. It will look like you just created a trap to collect money from them. Now, you also need to know where your money is hiding. I was speaking one and I said there are 21 places money hides. The place was full because I wanted to show them where money hides. There are 21 places money hides. You must discover where your own money is hiding and have access to it. Where yours is hiding is not where mine is hiding. Everybody has where his or her own gold mine is hiding. Discover where money hides and learn how to capture it and how to cultivate it, how to retain it, how to maintain it, and cause it to give birth to more money. The resources we have is enough to take care of Africa and take care of the whole world. So it is we that will now put ourselves in perspective so that you are not depending on anybody. Now listen, you are the greatest funder, provider for your vision. So use what you have to get what you need. When people see that your vision is succeeding, they will run after you. They will give you anything in order for them to be part of your vision so they can also be relevant in life. I think I've answered your question, sir.
Yes. Over to Cornelia. There was Networker there. I don't know if she still wants to have a question. I don't know how much time you still have for us. Networker, over to you, Cornelia. Cornelia, are you there?
Yes, sorry. Yes, I tried to move from the one angle to the other. Yeah. Good afternoon, Dr. Eric Israel Okere from Kenya. I am joining you guys from Clubhouse. I'm broadcasting live from there. And this is where I met Africa Forum, yeah, our prince over there. And he was sent from Africa Funding Africans. I don't have a question, but I just want to let you know this torch is not going out. Since he came to us for help to host the youth conference 2 years ago, we decided it's our African child, like you always rightfully say. And what you have shared with us on so many levels, this is what we have been preaching. This is how we have moved. And if you are a listener in this audience today, re-listen to Dr. Eric Israel Sokeres, what he said, and take action. Youth conference like this is not just because we're having fun, setting it all up and spending some time here, but also for you to go back into your communities and taking action and doing something with this information that we got. And if you don't know how to do it, you reach out to people like this. You ask, how did you do that? How did you do that? So I just want to thank you so much, Dr. Eric Israel Okere, for being here. I'm a proud South African living in Germany, and I am part of the African diaspora in Europe and the EU, and we have moved the needle with Prince, and we're not stopping today because this is for our children and our grandchildren that we are leaving behind. I salute you for everything that you have done for us today. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. All right, over to you, sir.
No, I'll leave it to Barrister BS. I want to say thank you again. There's so much I would say I should be saying right now, but I'll try and hold back and connect with you, and then we can talk on many levels. You did say something, one of very important thing in your speech, that you're looking forward and you are willing to host us in Kenya, and that's been one of our biggest dreams, because we know we have a good footprint. We want to bring these people on ground, and Kenya is one of the beautiful countries that we would love to have that happen, as well as many other countries. So thank you. We'll connect more, and we'll see how. I mean, we want to move from conversation to action. There's a lot of talking going out there, and I can bet you, like today, there are probably more than 500 conferences or summits happening in every different corners of the continent, right? And then after these conversations, what happens? So that is where we come in as One Africa Forum to say, we want to talk, that's good, because conversations help us to get ideas and share ideas and so on. But we want to move to action, like you did say. When you start taking action, you start getting respect. When you start taking action, you start getting listened to. When you start taking action, the vision becomes clearer, actually. So there's a lot that we want to move from conversation to action on. And yeah, thank you very much again. I'll hold it here. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Eric Israel Okere. We really appreciate all that you have said here today. We are inspired, and we look forward to really, acting on the insights and the ideas you've shared with us today. I believe everyone here will agree with me that we have really learned a lot from your wonderful speech, and personally, I'm inspired, especially when you talked about the area of enlightenment, education. For a long time, I've actually heard about One Africa Forum, but I really wasn't really active. I didn't really give, but by the time sorry, my name is Abiayu. I'm speaking from from United Kingdom, from the UK. By the time I did, I'm currently doing my master's in UK, and I did this course, global governance, which Dr. Kereke, you're one of our facilitators who came there, and the global governance opened us all up, especially those of us Africans, to see, at the global level, in terms of global politics, how Africa is being neglected, how Africa as a continent, is being swept aside, and yet is our resources, that actually the world is actually depending on and riding on, and yet we are just being, at the United Nations, talk about the Security Council, we are not represented. We have there's no representation, for Africa. Some of us really became passionate, about Africa. We need to wake up. We need to come together as one. Very different in different countries. Back then when I was in Nigeria, you're so engrossed with your country, Nigeria. But by the time you look further, you see that we are really behind in so many areas. So thank you very much. That area of enlightenment, our youth, first of all, so many of us really don't know what is actually happening at the global level. So many of our youths really don't know what is happening at the global level. So that enlightenment is one major area of interest I really picked from your speech. Thank you very much. We'll talk more, and so that I don't prolong the speech. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that wonderful speech. So shortly we'll be welcoming our next speaker. Our next speaker, Barrister Afamefuna Gbako. he's already here with us, and I'm sure we've all heard him, when he spoke earlier. So, sir, we want to welcome you on stage. You're highly welcome.
My pleasure always. And thanks to One African Forum. Thank you. My pleasure. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
It's an interesting opportunity to share this platform and cross-pollinate our ideas and knowledge in advancing education in Africa. So the privilege is highly revered by me, and I appreciate it. You've known me. You know what my passion. My passion is driven by knowledge. I want people to be educated. So thank you very much. So I don't know if the floor is open for me to advance the course of the.
Oh, yes. Yes, sir. You can, yes.
Okay.
You can take the floor now. You can take the floor.
All right. Thank you very much. I have been introduced. I wish to further add to my profile that I just existed from the Legal Aid Council of Nigeria, where I provided legal representations to indigent persons for 14 years. I represented them, I think, Mrs. Abiewa, you know me very well.
Very well.
We were associates. You had worked with me as partners in championing this cause. So thank you very much. I feel this topic is very, very interesting. Education for all African children. The time is now. Like Dr. Kure observed, we must advance from the realm of conversation to the realm of actions. My input in advancing this topic, I try to situate it from the historical background of education in Africa. Then I also try to balance it with practical challenges confronting education, especially for children in Africa. And I also profile my practical recommendations on the way out, very practical, because I'm a grassroots person. I'm speaking from my orientation and my ideology. I was bred in the village, and I know the challenges in accessing quality education. And my conclusion. In our introduction, I try to give a background. The topic at hand, education for all African children, the time is now, addresses a critical and timely issue stemming from the educational disparities prevalent across the continent. It is not a one country issue. It's for the entirety. The educational challenge faced confronting African child is a continental issue. It's a continent issue. It's not domesticated to one country. It cuts across. And as we go further in this discussion, we will see that it cuts across all countries in Africa. Now, it's important that in exploring this, there are key items we must look at. I try to share it. If you look at the evolution of education in Africa, you could see that it could be, I try to pigeonhole it into 3 eras. We have the pre-colonial education era, the colonial education era, and the post-colonial education era. Now, why I try to structure it this way is that when you understand the foundation and align it with the present challenges, it gives you a proper understanding to proffering a sustainable solution to addressing the shortfalls in education. Now, going further, the imperative for educating African children has deep historical roots dating back to pre-colonial times. Initially, education in Africa was predominantly rooted in cultural teachings, imparted informally often through mentorship by parents, community leaders, and age groups. This era was characterized by cultural barriers that hindered formal education, viewing it as incompatible with traditional norms and beliefs. I will expatiate on this. Now, before the advent of the colonial masters into the continent of Africa, we had an informal educational system. Each country in Africa had an informal education system wherein an African child is exposed to the norms, the cultural beliefs of their society. Now, when the colonial masters invaded and partitioned Africa, they came in with missionaries, as we can see. Now, when they came, the missionaries armed themselves with the gospel in advancing the gospel, and they also mingled it with education. They brought the mission schools, which formalized the education system. Now, that provided a limited opportunity because it was a transition from a pre-colonial era, transiting to a colonial era. The whites who came could not midwife a seamless transition wherein some of our cultural beliefs, which were of high value, could have been transmitted and provided, accommodated in the colonial educational curriculum. What they did was to annihilate them, tagging all of them to be repugnant. But what is happening in China today has demonstrated that education can be domesticated. Without domesticating education, you are going to leave a gully, a gap that cannot be filled. No matter how beautiful the foreign curriculum is, there will be a gap that cannot be filled. You must let the people own the educational system. You must accommodate the educational curriculum, whether formal or informal. So as we drive further, everybody will have a powerful understanding, a better practical understanding as to where we got it wrong in Africa. Why every money that UNESCO, all the donors have been given in advancing the course of education has not generated the expected result. I could tell you it's because of the gap created by that transitional mistake they made. Remember also that if you take Nigeria as a classic example, Nigeria is diversified, and there was a corridor created by religion. For the Northerners, they had a religious belief also that was Islamic in nature. So some of them were already knowledgeable in Arabic. While in the South, most of them are traditionalists whose orientation, I will speak specifically of the East, were all about trade and apprenticeship. Now, these formal educations or informal education, informal education system championed during the colonial era was rooted in the values of each of those societies and their religious orientation. So these were, but when the colonial masters invaded Africa, they did not create a corridor, a seamless corridor to hibernate those beliefs, those cultural and educational values to the new curriculum. So that left a gap that has not been cured. Now, in pre-colonial education of African child, the period was characterized by predominantly cultural education, devoid of Western influences. Education was imparted formally through mentorship by parents, community leadership. I said that earlier. In colonial education era of African child, during this period, colonial masters and missionaries played significant roles in shaping formal education systems. Their influence introduced Western education practices across Africa without accommodating the pre-colonial education value. Now, the Now topic, that topic, when I saw this beautiful topic, I don't know what inspired the person who generated this topic. When he said now, I interpreted to me practicable, domesticating it, that is trying to situate it to what is happening now, trying to solve the present challenge. It's not, you're talking about historical references made to educational investment that has failed. But it's saying, how do we solve this problem? Now, the post-colonial education of African children is where I'm going to devote more, because it is centered on the now coloration of the topic. Following independence, education became a pathway to leadership for privileged few. I must say this, that during the colonial era, opportunities were given to some privileged few. Most of these few were children of maybe Reverend Anglican Reverend priests who were privileged to interpret for missionaries. And the emphasis was on educational value. They saw some tiny light. They were able to explore the opportunity and brought some few. This opportunity churned out people like late Nnamdi Azikiwe, Julius Nyerere. Name them. Most of these few, Chief Awolowo, late Chief Awolowo, most of these persons access education by sheer privilege of the fact that their parents were maybe interpreting or were with missionaries. And this now gave them a platform to advocate for the independence of Africans or Africa or their countries. So we will advance, and as we advance, you will see that this also is another era that has culminated in the present conundrum, educational conundrum, that Africa child is faced with. During the colonial period, missionaries and colonial masters played pivotal roles in introducing formal education systems. Post-colonial Africa saw a gradual transition where education became a pathway to leadership for the fortunate few who had access to it. It was like an opportunity created for the illiterate bourgeois. Education was an opportunity that was created for those who had just a relationship or mere relationship with missionaries. Now, we are going to do an overview. In this overview, you will see some interesting revelations. Now, in this historical background that I have presented, coming from the pre-colonial era, the colonial era, and the post-colonial era, we discover that in the pre-colonial days, there were little or no budgets for education because education was very informal. Cost was not attributable. There was no accruable cost to education. Those were the pre-colonial days. There were no, the determining factor was access to missionaries and your capacity to see or understanding. Because to have an understanding and appreciate what it means, because they were looking at it as taboo there. But some of them, few who had this privilege and were convinced, explored it. So access to education as during the pre-colonial era cannot be compared to the post-colonial era and even the colonial era. Education budgets, there were no continental budgets. Sorry, my light just went off, sorry. That's one of the things we are talking. Educational budgets in Africa. Many African countries allocate, I'm now trying to streamline it to post-colonial era. Many African countries allocate insufficient funds to education, prioritizing tertiary education. over primary and secondary levels. Economic downtowns and political instability further strained budgets, impacting infrastructure and educational quality, improving in educational budgets, necessities, increased public spending, transparent management, and international support. Now, why I decided to take this route is that each of them has a pivotal role to play because of the cost of post-colonial modern day education. You could not talk about post-colonial education era without attributing cost to it. It's capital intensive. Remember, I have said earlier that during the pre-colonial days, there was little or no cost to education. In the colonial era, the cost was shouldered by the missionaries. Missionary schools were virtually free. In post-colonial era, cost became an issue because of poverty, because of poor leadership, because of corruption. Now, the current challenges to education of African children are multifaceted. I am trying to show that post-colonial era has posed the greatest danger to the education of an African child. Access and infrastructure. Many children in Africa still lack access to schools. This is a common knowledge. You can't pretend about it. Especially in rural and remote areas, there are practical examples in the continent, in the African continent, where in remote villages, even in Nigeria, people still sit on the floor without roofs, without structures, without classrooms. How do you educate such child? The quality of education. The quality of education varies widely across African countries and within different regions. Factors contributing to this disparity include poorly trained teachers, outdated curriculum, overcrowded classrooms, limited access to learning materials and technology. I will surprise you. You know, I have my ward in the UK, and before he moved, he was in high school. But I can tell you that the difference is clear. Exposing him to modern day educational facilities has widened his horizon. His disposition to learning has changed. He's inspired. His passion for knowledge has increased because the tools are available. The conditions are conducive. We also have socio-economic barriers. Poverty remains a significant barrier in post-colonial educational privileges available to an African child. So many parents wish presently that their children go to school, but the means to go to school, they don't have. The cost of enrolling in major exams is high, with inflation hitting the roof. So many African parents cannot afford the cost of enrolling their wards for major exams. Then there's the issue of gender disparities. Gender inequalities persist in education, with girls often facing cultural and societal barriers that prioritizes boys' education. The challenges include early marriage, household responsibility, and lack of support for girls' education. It is a common knowledge. in post-colonial Africa. We've seen that our leaders, some of our leaders are still limited by cultural beliefs that are repugnant. Conflict and security, you agree with me? Like if you use Nigeria as an example, you could see that Boko Haram was a major challenge. Majority of Northeast African children are in IDPs. Most of them are being accommodated without access to educational facilities because Boko Haram has declared a war against education. Poor health and nutrition is also a problem. Teacher shortages, shortage of teachers is a problem. It's also a major problem. Inadequate finance. Now, I want to dwell on this. Probably that is one of the greatest challenges faced by the African child of today in accessing education. According to recent analysis by UNICEF on education finance in Africa, less than 1 in 5 African countries meet the recommended benchmark of allocating 20% or more of their public spending to education, as stipulated in Sustainable Development Goals framework. This shortfall in providing funding has profound implications, limiting millions of children from acquiring essential skills necessary for future prosperity. It's a sorry situation, but that's the reality. Now, we try to x-ray the budgets, the educational budget of various African. Our guide was this UNICEF analysis. We discovered that North African countries have fared better in appropriating higher money or higher funds to education, followed by East Africa, and the worst is West Africa, followed by South Africa, East Africa, then the worst is West Africa. The report highlights a substantial financial gap, estimating that $183 billion US annually is required to meet sustainable development goals for education in Africa, while current resources amount to only $106 billion US. This disparity underscores the critical need for increased investment in education across the continent. There's a big challenge. The biggest challenge is paucity of funds. And you've seen that most African budgets isolating few. A major chunk of the budget is centered in recurrent. Education is given a minimal attention. And this is a big challenge. Now, we also attempted to practicalize how these challenges, especially following it from the pre-colonial era, the colonial era, and the post-colonial era, that is the current era. What are the practical ways to ensuring that African children access education? We agree in our team and our research work that there should be increase in investment in education. Government and international organizations must be sincere. They should prioritize education in national budgets, aiming to meet or exceed the recommended benchmark of allocating a mere 20% of public spending to education. This funding should target not only primary and secondary education, but also early childhood education and vocational trainings. Enhance access and equity. Efforts should be made to ensure all children, regardless of socioeconomic status, gender, and location, have equal access to quality education. This includes addressing barriers such as distance to school, inadequate infrastructure, and cultural beliefs that may discourage certain groups from attending school. This is a serious problem. This is a major problem. We also observe that quality teaching and learning should be provided. Improving teacher training and support is essential. Teachers must be trained. No man can give what he or she does not have. The problem we are faced, the major problem in imparting knowledge, in educating an African child, is lack of training for the teachers. Most of the teachers are outdated. I was shocked when I listened to CNN yesterday, and I saw that when Becky Anderson was trying to interview Omar Al-Olama, he said that United Arab Emirates has just created a ministry for artificial intelligence and is the first minister for artificial intelligence in the whole world. And when the discussion was deepened, this minister said they are trying to aggregate trillions of dollars in furtherance of this knowledge. Without a doubt, you could see that these people are sincerely committed to training. And this money that are trying to generate is to train people who will train. That was why I was happy when the last person asked a question to Dr. Kerry. And I was also note here that the governor of Edo State has also shown some level of understanding because you've seen that he has prioritized training of teachers with modern day training tools. You cannot compete as an African child who is being tutored by an archaic, outdated teacher whose curriculum is old and outdated. You can't compete globally. You just go to school for the mere sake. Within the committee of other global education states, you can't compete. The difference will be so obvious. Quality teaching and learning. I have said this over and over again. What we do at our little corner in Benin has demonstrated this. We have a set, you are aware, of about 98, average of 98 children who converge every Saturday. And we've been driving this process for about 6 to 7 years now, where we major in training them in the way of the Lord and supporting their educational needs. Because the highest investment you can do in a child is to give him education. If you like, imparting, give him orientation on a spiritual or religious belief, you will end up creating a bigot, a religious bigot, an intolerant person. But if you take interest in balancing what you are teaching him with modern educational tools, you are empowering him to be globally relevant. Curriculum relevance and adaptability. Secular should be updated to more relevant to local contents and future jobs markets. I want to emphasize on this. I believe that one of the reasons why African children have been shortchanged greatly is the failure of the post-colonial African leaders to domesticate education. There's a problem. What China has done by domesticating education has shown that if other countries did not go to sleep after pre-colonial era, colonial era, and this present post-colonial era, if African leaders had tried to have a transition where our educational system is domesticated to accommodate. Now, most things that are relevant to us, that would have enhanced people's passion towards learning, that are gradually fading away. Today, the history is no longer taught in Nigerian schools. Under the last administration, it was removed from the curriculum. How do you motivate a child? How do you train a child who does not know his history? How do you encourage him to learn? You are teaching him other people, other orientations, educational orientations and ideology. You have not been able to make him own it and see the passion in it. He could speak their local dialect. Education does not mean it's not restricted. Modern education is not restricted to a formal classroom learning alone. Technology integration. We must leverage on technology to enhance learning outcomes and reach remote areas. Like Dr. Kerry said, and I agree with him substantially, if you watch what is going on, there are some rural areas where CBTs, that's computer-based exams, cannot be conducted. You have to move them to urban areas. And you agree with me that with this stress, no child will give his best. If you are moving a child, an African child, who is resident in a remote village, but by virtue of the fact that the exam he wants to write, he has no access to the tools, the relevant tools, the technology to do the exam, you moved him to a new place. Probably some of them are seeing computer for the first time. You can project that that child will fail. The outcome of that exam will be known already. So these are big challenges that is inhibiting the success and access to educational facilities and impact in Africa. And the community and the parents must get involved. The idea that education is only for teachers in the classroom is wrong. An African child is given that orientation that if you say, go and meet your teacher in school, go and meet you don't have any role to play. You don't have any role to play. We must reorientate African parents and let them understand their role that they need to play if they want their children to be educated. Without reorientation, the outcome will be abysmal. We must also ensure that there's, through dialogue, we create a peaceful environment. You can't educate any African child where they're in the absence of peace. It's not possible. I also wish to conclude. Education for all African children. The time is now underscores the pressing need to address long-standing education disparities across the continent. From its historical roots in pre-colonial cultural teachings to the transformative impacts of colonial and post-colonial influences, education in Africa has evolved amidst challenges and opportunities. The critical challenges facing African children today are complex and interconnected. Access to education remains hindered by geographical isolation, socio-economic barriers, and gender disparities. Quality of education varies widely, exacerbated by inadequate infrastructure, teacher shortages, and outdated curricula. Furthermore, insufficient funding and the impact of conflicts and health crises like COVID-19 continue to strain the education system. Nigeria's budget on education this year is the highest we have ever had. And you agree with me, that is why we have had recurrent strikes by lecturers in the university, teachers. You see strikes coming up. Allocations are very minimal. It cannot drive the expected outcome. So I believe and I hope that this little input that we have made will help to redirect the leaders in advancing and changing the course of education in Africa. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, Barrister Afam Efunagbako. Thank you very much. We really appreciate this wonderful insight, and I'm sure we have all heard it. You know, I've known you as somebody who is very passionate about, you know, education, you know. So I am really, really inspired by the speech today. You know, Barrister Agbako is someone who, he has a law firm, but his law firm is a tutoring ground for every lawyer that comes into his law firm. I'm a partaker of that, you know. He trains lawyers in his law firm as if they are his students. And even children. I know he may not want to say, but he has children who are under his sponsorship. I know, and I have been part of that vision. I'm still part of that vision. You know, children who are under, who he sponsors, you know, and he's very passionate about education for Africa. And the way you have taken it today, from bringing us back, taking us back, you know, to where the problem started from, and now, you know. So because if you look at, if you have been exposed to the educational system, you know, in this other side of the world, the Western world, and then you know what happens back in Africa, you will see that really there's a lot of gap. There's really a wide gap which we need, you know, to really cover for the African child to be able to, you know, to get the best of education. Why is it that when our African children come out, you know, to the Western country, they do very well? Why? Because you know, it is why there's this champion inside the African child, but this whole issue of corruption, lack of facilities and all that is bringing us down. But I really thank God for people like Barrister Afam who is very, very passionate about, you know, the education of the African child. Thank you very much, Barrister Afam. Thank you very much. I want to, I don't know, I believe some of us who have questions or contributions that you want to, or insights that you want to share to this talk today, you know, from what we have heard. Please, if you have any question, if you have any contribution, please, the floor is open now.
Okay, I'll just quickly jump in before the others come in. I want to say thank you very much as well. I know David Kabwa is on standby to jump in right after Barrister Afam, so we might have to skip Mr. William and then come back to him later. So yes, David Kabwa, he will introduce himself, or I might introduce him later, but you also get to hear a lot from him as well. Thank you so much, Barrister Afam. There's I mean, you dropped so much nugget. At some point, I lost track of keeping notes. So I was like, you know what? This thing is being recorded anyway. I'll replay it. You know, I had to console myself with that to say, at least it's being recorded. I will find out, you know, I'll replay it. That's because it was coming back to back. No break, there was no time for a breather. Okay, Cornelia, thank you. We see you. So thank you so much. Taking us back to where it all began. Taking us back to where things got a bit complicated and where we are right now.
Yes.
And also giving us that consciousness to say there are practical ways that we can fix education. I think if we leave this room today with the information you and Dr. Okere have given us, and we do not make some conscious efforts to see how we change the narrative of education around the continent, I think we will not be proud of ourselves. So let me not say more on that. We will not be proud of ourselves, you know. And it just speaks to, like you talk about, to the leaders, you know, to the education. Barrister Dr. Keris gave an example earlier of somebody who sought some money, some funds from the United States, saying they want to help orphans and so on and so forth. And you see, and then that money was not used for what it was. But these are people that we look up to as our leaders. These are people that tomorrow we want to stand up for and say, vote for me. You know, I mean, because especially now coming up and saying he's a pastor, you know, whoa, so reverent, you know, can we trust this person? So these are the problem. They come up so saintly and with so pure intentions. How are we holding our leaders to account? You gave examples of typical instances where there are institutions, there are schools where people are sitting on the floor without roof. I mean, I could rather stay at home for somebody to come teach me than for me to leave my house in the morning in the cold and go to a place where there's no roof, you know, and it's still overcrowded and there's no form of education. But yet there are leaders that we have voted. That community has a counselor.
Yes, you're right.
They have a ward councillor, they have a local government councillor. That community has constituency. They have representatives in the parliament.
Yes,
you understand? Those communities, but what's happening? And of course, there are locations to those to those areas. You understand? There are locations. So what's happening? Even if it's just one school, you know, I was talking to someone some time ago around the whole concept of One Africa Forum, and he asked me, why One Africa? You know, and I said, if we can just change one person in Africa, if we can just build one school, you know, if we can just change one mind, like, you know, that's the idea. If we can, just one is enough. From one, it keeps going. From one, it keeps going. If, like Barrister Okere also said, it must be systematic. We must be able to build leaders that build leaders that build leaders. You know, and that is one of the many ways, one of the many ideas behind the ID One Africa Forum. Of course, it also really encompasses the full vision of One Africa. But how do we achieve One Africa without changing one African? You know, and that is what we push. So thank you, Barrister Okere. Thank you, Barrister Afam. Though I know Dr. Okere has left the room. Thank you, Barrister Afam, for the nuggets you've given. And I really appreciate you. I know your doors are always open. I was going to ask, please keep your doors open, but I know that your doors are always open. Maybe not to me, but I know to me soon. But to Barrister you as well.
My brother, I commend your passion. I'm willing to assist in any whatever form you want us to come in, because that's where he knows me very well. She has worked closely with me. I'm ready to partner with you people as well. It's a work in progress. If you educate a child, you give an opportunity, you are saving the future. You are not living, we are only living now. Tomorrow, the future belongs to these children. So the level of investment you make in them is what is going to preserve. It's like an ecosystem. It's what is going to preserve your tomorrow. So I'm ready. I'm willing. I'm ever ready. And now that I've retired from active service to face private practice, I'm willing. I'm no longer regimented. I'm available to join it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's fine. Thank you so much. We'll always stay in touch with you. Of course, through our legal advisor on international partnership. So I think this is one of the ways we are going to actually collaborate as well. It is also going to go through her table. But so thank you. There's a lot we want to do on education. We'll discuss more on this. There's a question here that says, what's your view on the role of Afrocentric pedagogy? So basically, the question is saying of the role of Afrocentric profession of teaching, right? Afrocentric activities of educating and teaching and instructing. How do we teach in an Afrocentric manner? I think you did say something around us owning it. You gave an example of China, right? So
we must domesticate it.
I think you partly answered that, but if you may just give that view again for the one who was asked the question. What's your view on Afrocentric pedagogy, Afrocentric way of teaching, Afrocentric curriculum, I guess, profession of teaching, and so on? I think I did say that in my opening remarks, but let's hear you, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I understand probably the fear of the person who is, trying to ask the question. If I understand it very well, is teachings influenced by cultural beliefs and orientation. Whether you like it or not, you cannot separate Africans from their cultural heritages. And any curriculum that is tailored, that tries to annihilate their culture, will become very uninteresting. One, it must face repulsive disposition from the students. I believe that when you try to balance it, it's not every part of our culture that is bad, especially educationally. There are cultures that are very, very good, morally approvable, and better off than what is found in any other place. Like you being respectful, you honoring your teachers, any curriculum that is tailored to accommodate that, we fail. So whether we like it or not, it must be carried along. In designing our curriculum, we must take cognizance of the fact that these people are people of culture. I do not have any problem with it. The essence of education is in the outcome. If you influence a curriculum and you color it with the tenets of the cultural beliefs that are not repugnant, that could excite students to go there and preserve their heritage, I bet you that people will embrace it. You agree with me that one of the reasons why people do not want to give up their children to access education in the colonial era was because of the fact that they saw it as a taboo. There was some cultural ignorance that tailored that belief. So I believe that Afrocentric curriculum, or bringing the cultural influences in teaching people and letting them know that they exist in a global world where tolerance, where they have to intermingle with people and compete, but on the side of achieving results and becoming global citizens, such culture should be encouraged. That's my answer to him. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's interesting because the one who asked the question is the one coming right after you. So I'm pretty sure they can really, and they're also going to be talking about education as well, but on a different angle. But before I introduce him, I saw that networker, Cornelia, your hand was up. You had a question, I guess. Cornelia, are you still there? Or maybe a comment?
Yes, I'm here. I'll be here all the time,
Okay.
so I'm not going anywhere.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Barrister Afam. My question to you is, I was very impressed when you said you are working with children as well to making them aware. Now, we have a very large continent with a lot of challenges, 55 countries, yes. How can we apply as parents, as grandmothers and fathers into our children to say no to the wrong, and how to teach them from a legal level in a very easy 1, 2, 3 step to put them in a total different mind frame? My belief is always when you teach that young child to make decisions like that from also a legal aspect and the right aspect, so that we don't have these challenges that we have had for so many years in Africa, from a legal point of view. How could we apply as mothers, as grandmothers, as grandfathers, as parents? How can we have those conversations at our dinner table with our children in just like even decisions that they have to make at school, because there's a lot of things, the world is moving at such a fast pace, and children are having to make decisions where I'm thinking to myself, that's just a child. But to also make that decision on a legal level, and knowing, yes, of course, we all make mistakes, and the child will make mistakes as well. But to try to put them in a mind frame to say, you know what, that is wrong. I can't stand for that. And I think that is how a lot of the youth are moving. I'm very proud of our youth in Africa at the moment, because they are also sitting down and thinking, the rest of the world are living from our resources, you know. So going back to that child, how can we apply it on an everyday life, at our coffee table, at our dinner table, to have those conversations, even from a legal point of view? I hope I was clear.
Very clear. I appreciate you, Cordelia. I think your question is a contemporary question. I'm faced with such challenges because you graduate the legal regime that governs parents-children relationship. There are legal statutory provisions that, like the Child Rights Act, that provides a lot. And there is also a ground norm constitutions for various African countries that where the right of children are accommodated. It differs from country to country. Now, in helping a child to make the right decision, especially educationally, is incumbent on the parents. It depends on the relationship the mother or the father has inculcated in that child or developed from time. I agree that there are peer pressures and there are also some idiosyncrasies arising from exuberance from children that may want them to ask you questions, to probe you. And like I have one at hand. Whilst my son was in Nigeria, he was telling me he was going to be a lawyer. I was highly impressed. He got to the UK, exposed, he started liking football. He's telling me he's going to play football. So I'm in a conundrum. So I try to tell him that you can do the two. You can be a lawyer and be a footballer. So it is left for me to give him reason, show him some worthy football legends, examples who had managed their professional career as footballers whilst maintaining their legal or other professional orientations or callings. So I think the job is left for the parents. At infancy, the mother or the parents have a lot to do. You must talk, you must live by, you must show them satisfactory and convincing examples, and you must show them the right way. You must guide them. It's your responsibility. There are bound to be, pockets of deviations. You could tell him this and he could tell you no. But also remember that the hand of the parents is tied, because when we are looking at this in Nigeria, as a child, from the age of 0 to 5, there are some level of rights the parent can exercise on a child. Now, when you advise a child from, let's say, 7, 8, 9 to 10, 12, so there's an advanced level of rights the parents could also express in guiding them. Then if he goes, you gravitate to 18, the child is attaining adulthood. The power of the parent in influencing the child begins to whittle down. So the parents must be very conscious, must be very passionate in consistently making the most of this timing. They are very important, especially in Africa. The parent must be very, very conscious of this timing, so that, because anyone you fail to maximize will come back to haunt you. So in helping them to make best educational decisions, you must also allow them to express themselves. Allow them to express them. He said he wants to play football. What I did in my instance was to allow him. I registered him in an academy while he goes to school. At times he comes back leaping. I'll tell him what's the problem. He tells me there was a hard tackle in the training. So he's now also consciously, I'll tell him, see, it's one of the burdens you carry as a footballer. So I'm helping him also to make the choice. He's wearing both shoes. He's knowing where it's paining him. So he could not be looking at the economic value of football or looking at the fame alone. There are other prices you need to pay. So he must be conscious. So as a parent, you must be very, very, very honest to yourself. You must be ready to do your job. Parenthood is all about hard work, and it must be consistent. It's not one-off investment. It's a consistent long-term investment. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Colony, I don't know if that question was answered satisfactorily. And if
Very
anybody
well
has
answered. Thank you so much, Barrister. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I don't know if anyone has any other question. Otherwise, we will give enough time for feedback. Actually, there's a time allocated for that during this program. Give enough time, and so you can just leave your questions in the chat, and we'll attend to them as we go. Just for the sake of time, so David Kabwa, I would like him to maybe introduce himself, but just briefly, I would say the little I know about him. He's the president of MOVE, M-O-V-E, so he will explain what that means. I know he's also an NLC member of Rise Mzansi. Rise Mzansi is a political party in South Africa, actually a new political party that pushed for a strong front in South Africa for more youth to be in power. It is so, and it gained a lot of relevance, a lot of ground in the country. And I know that they also have some seats, maybe 1 or 2 in the parliament. So it means that we also have the voices of the youth in the parliament, Rise Mzansi. And also, Mr. David Kabwa was the former, or rather is the former former president, or rather former prime minister. I think that's the word. He's the former prime minister of the Commonwealth Youth Parliament. He's also the Mail and Guardian. I think this would be was also the Mail and Guardian top 200 young South Africans. And also he's also he's also in the JCI top 10. So there's so much I could say about him, but I'm going to just shush and let him introduce himself. I think he'll do that better. And he will be talking today. He'll be speaking on something very important. He'll be speaking something very important as well, as we have also seen. His conversation will be centering around education, but beyond education, to be on voters' education. All right. So where do we bring politics in all these? And we're talking about our leaders in schools that are dilapidated, and we're talking about rules that are not good, and all this that affect education, because the environment where a child grows up also affect how well he does at school, he performs at school as well. So all this we're talking about, but how do we get involved in this whole conversation? So Mr. David Kabwa will be talking about the need for youth voters education and the consequences of voters apathy. All right, that's what he'll be discussing. And I'm going to leave the room for him now so he can take his time, and we'll take it from there. So thank you very much, Mr. David. Over to you, sir.
Right, really appreciate that. Very good afternoon, very good morning, and a very good evening, depending on the time zone that you're in. Before I do anything further, I'd like to acknowledge and appreciate the One Africa Forum. I think it's a very pertinent and critical discussion that you are hosting. And I think it comes at exactly the perfect time. In the South African context, which is where I will root a lot of the views that I will be sharing, we have or in the midst of experiencing a paradigm shift. For the first time in our democracy, we are in a space where the ruling party does not have a majority in parliament. The ruling party being the ANC, the party of Nelson Mandela. Ostensibly speaking, they are now having to form a grand coalition in terms of what we refer with a government of national unity. And the vote for the presidency occurred just last night. And we are still in the midst of forming the 7th administration in South Africa. We are also in Youth Month, and just tomorrow is Youth Day in South Africa. So when I got the invite, I was very, very excited. So once again, I appreciate your invitation, as well as the privilege and opportunity to be among such amazing panelists for this discussion. So my name is David Kabwa. I'm 26 years old, and I am a PhD candidate at the University of Pretoria. As you have heard, I'm a member of Rise Mzansi in the National Leadership Collective, and that is basically our national executive committee. So it's the party's top decision-making structure. Rise Mzansi is a brand new party that has contested elections in South Africa for the first time. We're not even a year old, and we are now represented in the province and in parliament and the highest decision-making structures. I'm also the president of MOVE, M-O-V-E, which is a youth-led political party. I'm the president and founder of that, where we currently have about 25,000 young people signed up. And in signing up young people, a very important component was to register young people to vote, which is where the conversation about voter education will come from. I've had the privilege of serving as the Prime Minister of the Commonwealth Youth Parliament, so the Commonwealth countries previously colonized by the British, about 54 countries, where I was overseeing the legislative affairs of young people across 54 different countries. I had the privilege of serving as the president of the Student Representative Council at the University of Pretoria, which is Africa's largest contact university. I was overseeing about 65,000 students across 7 campuses. So I've been through a number of electoral models, electoral systems, and I've witnessed a number of electoral outcomes, hence the important conversation that we will be having about voter apathy and the role of educating young people in the space. Now, before we do anything, I want to emphasize the following point, and that is that I like to make the statement that I believe is an absolute truth, and that is that young people are not we are the present. And one of the greatest reasons why we see voter apathy, not only in South Africa, but across the continent and broadly across the world, is because young people do not see ourselves represented in spaces of power and spaces of authority. Now, a little bit about the background about my political journey is after I had served as SRC president at the University of Pretoria, and just to give you a context of what happens in South Africa, students will listen to their SRC more than they listen to the government. Because of that, political parties spend a huge amount of efforts, funding, time, and resources investing in SRC presidential elections to try and gain a foothold. So I took on every major South African political party as an independent. It means I was without a political party at the time, and I won. And I served 2 terms, becoming the first 2-term SRC president. When this happened, a conversation began nationally. Who is this young person, and how is he taking on every major political party without funding or a huge plethora of support? Now, the result was that I got invitations from every major political party in South Africa. I had 9 different political parties, all of them represented at a parliamentary level, come and approach me. And I won't get into the specifics of the conversations I've had with these parties, but it's important to know the nature of the discussions that we had. One party approached me and said, well, we want you to work with us, but you know what? You're still young. We'll put you in parliament, but this thing you're talking about making change, just be quiet a bit about that. Calm down, pay your dues, and eventually we'll see if we can't elevate you in some capacity. So I was tempted with the promise of having a seat in parliament, but a seat that doesn't really do much. Another party approached me and said, we will put you on the mayoral committee of the city. In South Africa, we call that an MMC, a member of the mayoral committee. It's like a minister for your city. And that offer essentially indicated, yeah, you know, you're young. We'll just offer you this seat. And when I went and I dug a bit further, I had found that the seat they offered me was a seat that belonged to a coalition partner. Essentially, I was made an offer for a seat that I would never get. And the list goes on. As I'm having conversations with these different political parties, what becomes very evident is the fact that young people's participation in the political space has often been marked by tokenism, meaning that, yes, let's have a young person at the table, but let's not really give them a substantive role. Let's tick the box and say, hooray, we have accomplished our goal of having a young person, without ensuring that that young person actually has the space, the means, and the likelihood to make a meaningful contribution. Now, as I begin my conversations with young people, I decided that I am not convinced by any of the political parties that we have in the space today. So I took the very bold step and decided to form my own political party. At the time, I had a clipboard, a pen and paper, and I was speaking to about 700 people per day. It was one of the most exhausting endeavors I ever did. You might imagine you need thousands of signatures to be able to start a political party. So I focused on speaking to young people. And as I'm speaking to young people, 3 things stood out for me. The first is a distinctive lack of information. And that one is very important, and I'll get to that. The second thing that stood out for me was there was a huge level of distrust. And the third was a perception that politics is not meant for young people. Now, on the African continent, according to the African Charter and the African Youth Charter, 65% of the population on this continent are classified as youth. We hold the lion's share in the population. In the South African metric in the previous election, the ruling party was elected with 10 million votes. 14 million people decided not to vote. So you can imagine the paradigm shift that would happen if those unregistered voters simply decided to stand up and make their voices heard if they vote. Now, as I continue with these conversations, I realize that it is very difficult to make a substantive change if you don't know what the change looks like. And to understand what the change looks like, you need to understand the system in which you operate. To understand the system in which you operate, you need to identify how that system is structured. Now, the problem with voter apathy is that most voters, and particularly us as young people, if you go, and I believe in this space, I'm preaching to the choir, but if you go and you speak to the average young person about how political systems actually operate, you will find there is a lack of knowledge. So, for example, I would speak to a young person and they'd say, the government needs to do more. My question would be, okay, how do you think we can ensure that that becomes a reality? I don't know, they just need to do more. And these were the nature of the conversations that we would have. And I would find that when I take time to sit down and break apart, what does doing more look like? We see a greater level of understanding, but also a greater call to action. Now, if I were to use two examples, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that Nigeria uses a presidential system in terms of how the government is formed. In South Africa, we use a parliamentary system. So in order to understand, to the earlier conversation about how to better our infrastructure and schooling and ensure that there is a greater level of accountability, you need to first understand the system in which you operate. And I won't get into that because that's a whole entire conversation. But essentially, most governments have three spheres of government: the executive, which is the president and their cabinet, the legislature, which is parliament, and the judiciary, which is the courts. And to understand the relationship between these three spheres of government allows you the opportunity to make a meaningful contribution. A very simple example. In South Africa, we have what we call a petitions committee in parliament. So I, as a member of the public, can write a petition about the state of toilets in my school. I write that petition, I submit it to my member of parliament. The member of parliament then has the responsibility to take that petition towards the floor of parliament. If it gets passed there, it may result in a rule, in a law, in a piece of legislation that is then tabled before the executive, either a minister or the president. They sign it into law. That law goes on to change the country. Now that change starts it with a petition. And you can imagine if I stand up and I might decide to lead a protest, great, I was on the news, lots of people heard about what I'm talking about. But when all of the media attention dies down, the very same problem still persists. That toilet is still broken. The issue has not yet been addressed, and it has not been addressed because I am not informed enough to understand what is the process that I need to follow in order to make a substantive change. As I would go around and speak to people in South Africa, we have a big issue with what we refer to as load shedding, which is essentially power cuts. At least 8 hours of the day, in many areas, we are without power. And when I would go and I would speak to a lot of youth, you'd be surprised. A lot of young people were not aware of the fact that we have different political parties, that we have alternatives. So when I would speak to young people, they'd say, oh, you're in politics. Why did you give us load shedding? How dare you come here and speak to us? Not understanding that it's the dynamics that exist of the government of the day. So that level of voter education became very important because what I had found is a lot of the most ardent supporters that we've had who really helped us to engage in communities came from conversations with young people who grew to understand that your voice matters, your vote matters. And when you are able to channel that in the correct manner, it does result in a substantive change. On the point of understanding what representation looks like, I like to say that every single individual in society is an activist. We have 4 kinds of activism. The first is what we call a change maker. The second is what we call a disruptor. The third is what we call the active citizen, and the fourth is what we call a reformer. Now, a change maker is someone who moves in a community and has the ability to engage and mobilize and put numbers together. I think in most of our communities, each of us knows of a change maker. When we think of activist, if I say the word activist, it's the second one that probably comes to mind for you, the disruptor, those who march in the streets, who protest, who make noise, and essentially what a disruptor does is they identify an issue. So we must mobilize, we mobilize according to an issue. And then the third trend is the active citizen. All right, now let's be active about how do we solve this solution? How do we create avenues by which these problems can be addressed? Once we have found how to address these issues, it then goes to the fourth point, the reformer. The reformer is the person who sits at the table and actually uses what all 3 spheres have said to create change. A reformer is normally someone in a space of authority, someone in government, someone who perhaps is a representative. And here we start to see the interplay between our role as members of society, as activists in one of these 4 spheres, and the relationship that has on bringing about a substantive change. So when we get to the point where we are better informed and better educated, we realize that we might be able to fall into one of these 4 categories. And my view is each of us are already operating in some capacity, whether we realize it or not. When we are better informed, we have the ability to better inform others. When we are all better informed, it results in us being able to make a substantive change. Because I've had many conversations with a lot of young people that said, Dave, in my country, if I were to try what you did, speak to 700 people per day, get 20,000 or so young people together and try to create some kind of a movement, our political system simply does not allow that, David. So what do we do? And this is where we start to see the different forms of activism come into place. Every major movement that has happened in the history of mankind, and I say this boldly, has been started by young people. Every major movement, every liberation fighter that we have on the African continent, if you look at when they started moving towards the understanding of what we term today as liberation, it all started as young people. Many spaces, these organizations started in institutions of higher learning, in universities, in school halls, and church halls, but they were all started by young people. And this is why it becomes important to understand the dynamics in your own context. And once we understand those dynamics, we are able to identify the most effective mechanism we have towards creating a change. Now, the other element that I want to unpack, and I'll try and do this very briefly for the sake of time, is the understanding that young people's participation cannot be participation based on tokenism. In the introduction, you've heard that Rise Mzansi places a very big emphasis on ensuring that young people do not only have a seat at the table, but we are part and parcel of the decision-making processes. I've always said that I will not wait for you to give me a seat at the table. I will grab a chair and I will march over to that table. I will plant my seat down and I will be part of the decision-making structures. And it's important to understand that this does not always come from a place of antagonism. It comes from a place of understanding that if we are not active and intentional, we will never find ourselves in these spaces. Currently, the youngest member of parliament sworn in this recent election that we have had in South Africa is 20 years old. And I've had the pleasure of engaging with this individual, and she, I believe, is one of the best and brightest young minds that we have. And part of that is also because she is very, very well informed. Now, voter apathy is such a huge issue because of the lack of understanding that we have had about the agency and the power and the ability that we have to make a difference. I really am grateful for everything that the barrister has outlined, because essentially he described different systems, how a lot of the issues we experience on the African continent are systemic in nature. I am what we refer to as a post-structuralist. And structuralism is a worldview that looks at the world in terms of a structure. This is how I view the world. There is always a structure. In that structure, there are elites. The elites control the way the structure functions. Now, the reason why I refer to myself as a post-structuralism, and those who might have read about political science may be more familiar with the term, post-structuralism views the elites in the structure as changeable. I love the example that the barrister gave about China as well, because China and the United Nations is part of the permanent 5 members. About a decade ago, it was thought of impossible to see what we in political science refer to as a global South country. You might know it as a third world country. What was previously referred to as a third world country having the kind of global influence that China has. China is now an elite. So the elites within that structure have changed. Understanding how the structure functions and operates allows you to navigate that structure towards creating a positive change. Now, what becomes important is to ensure that the change that we are making is not a change that operates in silos or change that operates in isolation, which is why, again, and I'm leaning to what the barrister said quite a lot, because I really am very impressed by how succinctly it was presented. He went into a lot of depth in a very simplistic manner, which I must say is not an easy thing to do. One of the things he outlined is the importance of kind of the communal aspect, that nothing really happens in isolation. And one of the biggest driving factors behind voter apathy amongst young people, particularly in Africa, is the misunderstanding. And I refer to it as a misunderstanding deliberately. There is a misunderstanding that my singular vote does not matter. Dave, why vote? My one vote will not make a difference. That is a misnomer, and it is a misunderstanding. My first election at the University of Pretoria, the context around the time is no independent had ever won an election before. So the understanding was, if you vote for an independent, you are wasting your vote. I went on to be one of the most consequential presidents the university ever had. Until today, about 5 years later, I hold the record for the highest voter turnout ever. So the point that students started a petition for me to come back for another term, but that would result in my having to change the constitution. I chose not to do so. But my ability to make a meaningful impact came from the students who decided, you know what, let's give a chance to the independent. My first election, I was elected with about 200 votes, a very small margin. My second election, I was elected with nearly 8,000 votes more than the number 2 individual. And again, that was those contributions. In South Africa, for the first time, the ruling party, the ANC, is not the majority party. And that is because of the individuals who decided, you know what, I'm going to put my vote in an alternative. Various parties who contested. We now have 18 different political parties represented in parliament. That is the widest we have ever had. Recently, a Government of National Unity agreement was signed, which stipulates that every piece of legislation passed in the South African parliament must have a 60% threshold, meaning that 2 parties can no longer just come together and come to an agreement on how the country must move forward, which means if you are a South African, in my context, you have the ability to petition your members of parliament in a way that was never available before. The time is now to make that meaningful impact and to make a meaningful difference. So the importance of voter education, and I'll close with this, the importance of voter education is predicated on the following, and that is that we need to combat voter apathy. In order to combat voter apathy, we need to ensure that we are represented in these spaces. And representation is not always coming from antagonism. Most people think that when I say I'm going to take a chair and sit at the table, that I'm showing up to fight with people. It is not fighting with people. It is simply speaking truth to power in a way that does not undermine our constitutional and democratic processes. And I believe it's important to call a spade and say what must be said. The second element, in terms of ensuring that we have a better sense of voter education and to combat voter apathy, is education. education about how the systemic nature of our problems functions. And no one person has a piece. Let me see, no one person has the entire puzzle. Each of us has a piece. My area of expertise is international relations. I'm currently studying a PhD towards that. And if you were to ask me about questions about energy development, yes, I can speak from a space where I've heard, but I am by no means an expert. I believe each of us has a very good understanding of the specific issues that affect us. You don't need to go and familiarize yourself with all of the issues. Start where you are. Understand, how does this issue operate within the system where I am based? Once you do that, you are able to then galvanize that towards creating a meaningful change. You become better educated. And what you'll find is when you begin dealing with one issue, you start to understand how the system itself functions. Because what you'll find is the issues might be different, but the system itself still functions the way that it was designed to function. In many instances, that's not always a good thing, but that's a conversation for another day. The third element, and this will be the last element as I wrap up. The third element, particularly for young people in the space, is to understand that young people are the present. I have no issue with the term that young people are the future, because this is a fact. We are the future. But my view is the future is now. We don't need to wait. So many young people I speak to say, oh, you know, I'll see in probably about 10 years or so. If your feeling is that it will take you 10 years to capacitate yourself with the knowledge and information that you need to be impactful, that's okay. Take your time. There's no need to rush. But if you are of the mind, of the view, of the opinion that there is something that you can do now, you don't need to wait to do it, because the reality is the world will not wait for you. Imagine if your solution is the solution that will impact an entire generation and you decided to wait. That means you have kept a generation waiting. You might be the voice of a nation in this generation, bringing it up for joyful jubilation and amazing contemplation. But because you thought of your pontification, you did not move forward. And that is something that I think we need to avoid at all costs. So I'm going to summarize and end off by saying, if you ever hear me on a platform, you will know what I am about to say. And that is that I hold the firm belief that we have the capacity and we have the capability to loosen the shackles of mediocrity that have bound so many to complacency. You see, one of the most important elements that you can ever think about is the fact that life is a matter of decision. And the thing about decisions is decisions are not a one-time endeavor. You will feel motivated when you leave this particular session. You're going to feel great. But the question is, when you get home and you need to face the harsh reality of life, what happens when your motivation is lacking? Discipline takes you across the finish line when motivation is lacking. And discipline is nothing except a series of decisions that we make on a daily basis. So we need to make the decision to not be mediocre, to address voter apathy by ensuring that we are intentional about pushing proper voter education as young people, because young people are the present. Thank you very much.
I would expect everyone to unmute their mic and just just say something. Okay, Cornelia, I see your hand right. That was quick, Cornelia.
Yes,
That
yes,
was quick.
yes, 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 yes. David Carver, this is what we as activists have given our lives for on the streets of South Africa. That children like you can be born and change the narrative and change the future. And you have shown to the rest of Africa what we are capable of doing. You're making me very emotional now. So I'm like, yes, yes, yes. This is what God has like given our life to survive, you know, to step in and just continue for our children. I'm so glad that you are here today. And if anybody don't know South Africa yet and know what has happened to us, and those of us who are still alive, and has fought the cause for people like David Carver to be born, for David Carver to say, you know what, this is our continent, this is our country, and we are bringing change. And Prince, you know you're part of us. So thank you so much for this day. Hey, this is a little good space to be in yet again. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Cornelia. Thank you. I don't know. Yes, Barrister Alpha.
Mr. David, you are a revelation. That's the most I could say. I have a question for you. I want to first of all thank the conveners of this forum. You know, until you have this kind of privilege, you may not understand the enormity of challenges in Africa. Prince, God will bless you. Thank you. Keep it up. David, I want to ask you, with your passion, there's hope for Africa. There's hope for Africa. I'm stunned at your age, you have been able to turn things around. You've defied the odds, worthy of commendation. Please don't stop. I want to ask you, what are your plans in trying to mitigate the division being sponsored by some deviant youths, wherein we are intolerant and repulsive to our fellow Africa? What kind of crusade or campaign do you have in place as you are trying to advance the cause of developing South Africa by not joining the bandwagons of leaders who think that you must align with them to effect change? What kind of effort are you making to ensure that this recent monster called xenophobia is being nipped on the bud? Are there structures in place? Are there campaigns to unite Africans, to make us see that we are brothers, that a Nigerian can live in South Africa peacefully within the norms, within the legal regime and respect for one another of South Africa? What effort is being made? Because I've seen you are a hope. Thank you.
Chair of the session, may I respond?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. Barrister, I appreciate that. I think in equal measure, you are a revelation as well. So I do consider this a privilege also. I always say the following: South Africa does not have an issue with xenophobia. We have an issue with Afrophobia. And the reason why I emphasize that is because if you look at all of the xenophobic rhetoric, it is targeted against fellow Africans. I have, you might imagine my surname is Kabwa. So although I am South African born and raised, my parents are of a Francophone origin. So even as I was engaging with South Africans on the ground during this campaign, they say, "Oh, we love what you're saying. It's great." I would sit, we would unpack the economy. Great. "Oh, what's your name, by the way?" "Oh, David Kabwa." "Oh, Kabwa. What is that?" And, essentially you start to see kind of a shift in mentality. The unfortunate reality is the top 5 performing political parties in South Africa today were elected on a very divisive rhetoric. Oftentimes, the divisions have manifested themselves in terms of class, but to a very large extent, the divisions have been predicated on that of ethnicity. So kind of blatant Afrophobia, which I do find very unfortunate, in that in some instances it's been perpetuated intentionally, and others it's been perpetuated unintentionally. And I was having a conversation with a group of South Africans recently when we were reflecting upon the election results. So we had a 58% voter turnout. My view is that the actual reflection would be around 62%, but that's a conversation for another day. So I'd like to say about 35 to 40% of South Africans didn't vote. And what strikes me as interesting about this has been the fact that oftentimes it's the most open-minded South Africans who end up not voting, open-minded in their thinking, but not open-minded towards politics. And that, again, is why the apathy that we see in South Africa, for me, is such a pertinent issue to address. So to answer your question directly, the campaigns that we'll be running is a shift in focus on mobilizing disgruntled and disaffected South Africans who form part of this 40% in a way that does not encourage any nuances that speak towards Afrophobia. what is very easy to do is to look at the trend and say, okay, the trend right now is that to identify foreigners as an enemy results in a better electoral performance. Therefore, let's adopt the same rhetoric to ensure a better performance in the next series of elections. I think that is very short-sighted in terms of building a national identity. So our view is to push a message that does not devolve into the question of an us versus them dynamic. And we're very intentional about this, while also still respecting that one needs to operate within the rule of law. Because I get this question quite often is, are you not soft on the question of foreign nationals in South Africa? And I say, no. South Africa, fundamentally, I believe one of the things we need to do is to address illegal immigration. I think illegal immigration anywhere is a problem, but that doesn't mean immigration is a problem. And the problem is there is a rhetoric that seems to regard immigration and illegal immigration as the same issue. Illegal immigration fundamentally comes from a poor leadership approach. We need better leaders who can better manage the system to ensure that the immigration process is accessible for those who want to enter according to the correct means, while ensuring that we do not isolate foreign nationals. There is no country in the world that was built without the contribution of foreign nationals. I was having a debate with colleagues the other day about the quasi-greatness of the United States. And the United States, which is hailed, I think that is diminishing in recent times, but is largely still hailed as the bastion of what a good society looks like, is literally a society of foreigners. So how can you speak about better developing a society while excluding one of the largest contributing factors towards societal growth and development? The last thing I'll say is, if you look at what is happening in Japan currently, Japan is in a crisis, population crisis. And this population crisis is predicated on the fact that the Japanese are not open to the idea of immigration. And because of that, Japan is one of the few countries in the world where they have a ministry to deal with birth rates. They have a minister specifically assigned to this. In the same way that you mentioned the UAE having a minister for AI, it largely demonstrates that there is an intentionality from the side of government, but it also demonstrates that there is a problem that needs to be addressed. Hence, in South Africa, we had an electricity minister introduced in the last election cycle to try and address the problem of electricity. It shows you how much of a problem that is. So if you look at the global trends, not even in Africa, outside of Africa, what we see is that the contribution that foreign nationals have made towards bettering a society has a net benefit. It is beneficial. The question then becomes, how does one regulate it in a way that does not alienate people, but also maintains the rule of law? And I very much believe that this is possible. And in a lot of my consultations, did you know my political party, Rise Mzansi, was the third best performing party amongst expats in the world as it pertains to South Africa. And that's because we were intentional about reaching to various other nationalities and getting the perspectives, because a wider array of understanding an issue is always of benefit. And I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, David. Again, I don't know if there's any other question, please drop it. David has to rush. I know he's told me that before. He has to rush. And let me just quickly pull this out there, Mr. David. You did mention something around conversations that will be going on soon as regards striking this balance, and I think more sensitization and so on. I think it is a very important conversation. It's a very important issue that needs to be addressed. So when that kicks on, let me know. I'll be willing, I'll be willing to jump on board, especially also as a foreign national living in South Africa. I think I will be able to also provide some perspective from the angle, and I'm sure from your experience, you get what I'm saying. I would like to really be involved in those conversations and in those campaigns as well, especially from my angle, because I mean we have different experiences. Your experience, you're quite fortunate. You are born and bred in South Africa, right? So whenever you have to answer that question, you also have that back in. Unlike me and some other people that I know, we are migrants, right? We migrated to South Africa.
Yes,
You understand? And so now there needs to be that striking balance. And there are a lot of ways I think this can be addressed. And I know you also have brilliant minds. So yes, let's jump on that conversation. That's actually what I wanted to just put in as well. I don't know if anyone else has any question. Otherwise, we will be pausing it now for any general feedback. I don't intend that this meeting takes so long. That's the honest truth, because I want, when we say next time as One Africa we're having a program, I want people to be excited to jump on board. I'll leave it back again to Barrister Abiyawa, but I don't know if anybody has any points to raise, maybe not even on what other speakers have shared, but on the idea of this conference as well, this summit, on the entire topic as well, or the organization. I see a lot of people out there, Amarachi, I see Olua Bukola, I see Mafiana, Dr. Mafiana, Mr. Walter is there, Cleopatra is there, Brabra is there. Brabra, by the way, is our coordinator of One Africa Forum in Ghana. She has been one of our very, very strong diamonds. Diamond may come small, but she's not just she's strong, and she's a diamond as well. So yeah, that's Barbara. Thank you. It's good to have you here. There's Valentine. I see you. I see Victor. I mean, I can't call everybody's name out here. Emma is here. Emma is our coordinator of One Africa Forum in South Sudan, right? So I'm pointing this out because I know I had told some of you that we have footprints in many of these countries and coordinators in some of these countries. These are proofs, right? So we're willing to work and move forward. Sister, let's see who we have here. Okay, so I'm going to pause and leave it to Barrister Abiyawa, and then we can take it from there.
Wow. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thanks. A big thank you to every one of us that have made this event a success today. Once again, thank you so much, Barrister Afam. Barrister Afam Ifuna is one mentor that I have seen that is so passionate. Some of the names we are calling there on the platform, they are his, my co-mentees. We are his mentees in the law firm. Bukola, Amarachi, we are all Barrister Afam's mentee in the law firm. We are lawyers under his tutelage. So as we were just calling their name just now, I was laughing, because he's somebody that is so passionate about, training and, bringing up. Yes, we've gone to law school, but the practical realities of it, you need to come and learn it from people who have passed through the road. And a big thank you to people like Barrister Afam who are out there. And then the philanthropists, different areas. I say there are over almost 100 children under his scholarship that he's sponsoring to school. He didn't tell his story that he was working. He went to a secondary school without shoes. He was using barefoot to go to school, but paying people's school fees in a home and abroad, to sponsor them to school. Thank you once again, Barrister Afam.
Appreciate you, ma. Thank you, ma.
Thank you. Thank you to Dr. Eric, though he has left the room. He's another person that inspires me so much. So I really want to say thank you to every one of us. Our last speaker, David Kubwa, though he has left the room too, a big thank you to you. You are another, when I see youth like this, young people like this doing great things, it's especially Africans, it inspires me. The course that I did that gave me this passion for this photo, One Africa Forum has been there. I've heard about it before, but I've really never, really never actively participating. But until when I did this course, Global Governance, and this course was designed, put together by a Nigerian lecturer, showed it to the school, and it's not a curriculum that is running, that people come to, when they learn it, especially those of us that are from Africa, we we develop this passion to give back to our country, not just to come here, see, enjoy what you're doing there, but think of how to develop your country, back there. These are, Africans, we are doing wonderful things out there. So we need this enlightenment, which is education, education that is relevant in this present age, Thank you very much. Thank you so much to every one of you, and to our anchor, our host, the Ambassador Edosege Erahan. Thank you so much for all that you are doing. Thank you so much. And all of us in the room today, I can't mention all our names. I really want to say a big thank you. And then just to let us know, the speech that Barrister Afam gave will be out. So we are going to put it together as a publication and send it to our emails and our LinkedIn pages, so we can all have access to it and make reference to it in the future. So really want to appreciate everyone here today. So we'll be wrapping it up at this stage. I don't know if anyone has anything to say before we finally say goodbye. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll just jump in. If anyone has anything, please just raise your hand or unmute your mic. I'll give you the floor. Just to quickly say, I did mention Emma here. I see this is a different Emma, right? This Emma is in the UK. I think this Emma is your colleague. So Emma Kwaje was here. She left. Her name is Emma Kwaje. Like I said, she's the coordinator of One Africa Forum in South Sudan. If you look at some of the recent things we did with women and girls in the organization, it was in South Sudan, and she was the one who was running that coordination as well. And she's been really so amazing. So I wish she was really here. Something interesting happened during the week. I think we just lost Barbara now. Barbara was in the office of one of the ministers in Ghana. I mean, she's been bedridden, but she just went to see this minister. And in the evening, she sent me a photo, and she was so excited. And I sent a voice note. I was like, okay. When I looked at the photo, it was a headline of an activity that One Africa Forum did 3 years ago in 2021. That the minister has found so important to him and put somewhere in his office, that gives him some inspiration. So she took a photo of it and sent me and said, we can't give up now. And it was really encouraging. I wish she was here. It was really encouraging. I was like, okay. I mean, I know we've done a couple of, but I wouldn't imagine somebody like that at that time to have had that in their office. But that's just a good sign. And I want to say a very big thank you to Barbara again. I see Mr. Walter is here. Mr. Walter is also one of the directors of One Africa Forum. He's the director for entertainment and sports of One Africa Forum. So you see, we try to address different issues from different corners on the continent, but just understand the vision. And let's understand that we want to develop Africa, whatever it is, whatever it will cost us to ensure that Africa is a developed state. That is what we want to do. We had a target in 2020 to educate 30 million Africans by 2030, right? It's 2024 right now. We're still not even close to that line at all, but we are not giving up. We're not giving up. And when we say education, we're talking about all forms of education. Whatever will bring people out of their shackles. That's what we mean. You get it. So that's why we're calling on everyone to say, hey, whatever it is you're doing, whatever little angle you can say, okay, I'm taking one person in. And so that was what excited me when I heard of Barrister Afam, saying he's doing so much for education. I said, this is what we want to do. This is what we want people to be doing. These are the kind of people we want to put out there to say, guys, Africa is not down. Africa is not, we love education. And for 30 million people to be educated by 2030, that's a long stretch. But that was a vision that was clear. It was clear we can do it. And who knows? Barrister Afam has probably done 500 from that 30 million, right?
Yeah. Unknowingly.
Unknowingly, you see. And there was Dr. Eric as well. We don't know how many he has done from that 30 million. These are the cumulative numbers that come together to say, this is what we have achieved by 2030. And then we stretch it again. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on and talk about the visions and the plans of One Africa Forum because it's what I'm passionate about. It's what I eat, what I drink, it's what I walk on the street on, it's everything. But there'll be enough time to discuss those things. And that's why I'm happy to engage with many of you, on different levels and on different platforms. And we will talk more on this. So I want to say thank you again. Thank you again to everybody who has made that time to be here. Thank you so much. I don't want to go around and be mentioning names again. Thank you so much. Let's do this. We usually have our Global Youth Conference in August. This year, we may not be able to do it in August. We probably move it towards the last quarter of the year. But the idea of it is we want to take this Global Youth Conference from a virtual conference to a physical summit. And that is where we need all stakeholders on board to say, how do we get this to be? And when we say a global conference, now this is an African Youth Summit. A global conference will involve us bringing all those who are hungry outside the continent of Africa that really want to be involved in the activities of Africa, right? Like Dr. Eric gave example of a group of people in the United States who said, we want to do X and Y in Africa, right? So we want to, it's a conference that brings together the global youth, especially the global African youth together in one place and say, what is the way forward? And how do we get involved? So that is the idea of a global youth conference. We've had it several times, and as a matter of fact, it's always been virtual. This year, we desire that we have a physical global youth conference. So Eric said, and it chuckled me a little, and remember Mr. Walter would attest to that. I said to him, Mr. Walter, sometime, I said, my dream for One Africa Forum Global Youth Conference is that a time will come where we will not be using halls, but stadiums. For One African Forum. And I told Mr. Walter that. And Dr. Eric said it. Fill stadiums and I will come. And that's what he said.
Yeah,
he said, fill stadiums and I will come. And then it clicked to me and said, this is the vision. I mean, imagine bringing the whole youth together and bring them in the hall. It's not possible. But the World Cup is held in stadiums. So it's possible to bring the global youth together in stadiums. That's the idea. And that is where we need everyone to come on board and say, how do we achieve it? What is the vision for this year's Global Youth Conference? Where do we start? Where do we do? Who are the stakeholders? Who are we bringing on board? We'll bring it together. And then we'll put Africa on the global map confidently and certainly to say, this is what Africa stands for. And not those wrong stereotypes and wrong narratives that Africans suffer around the world. If we don't tell our story, nobody will tell our story for us. As a matter of fact, they will keep telling the stories the way it benefits them. One Africa Forum is not isolating Africa from the rest of the world. No. As a matter of fact, One Africa Forum is putting Africa closer to the rest of the world. And as a matter of fact, putting us to stand out as a light in the world. That's what we're doing as One Africa Forum. You understand? Say, we want to be a part of the decision makers. We don't want to be eating crumbles. We don't want them to decide and say, take. We want to sit on that table. Not me, not One Africa Forum, but Africans. That's the idea. That's the whole idea. Let's get people on board. Let's get people involved. Alia, you can come on board. And Barbara, I see you again.
I'm here. Just to let you guys know as well, the African diaspora back here, they are moving faster than ever before. If you look at the African diaspora, they are working directly with Africa. We have so much representation in Parliament at the moment, and there are more coming in to have that voice. And that is exactly what Prince is talking about. When people ask me the first time, when I came back to Europe for the second time, I said I came in as a businesswoman. I didn't come in to clean toilets. I didn't come in to do whatever else. You will recognize me for who I am and what I have done. And if you can have this mind frame in your head and move like that, you break all those barriers that they're trying to give you. And I am proud to say that African women in Europe, if you don't know them yet, they have built from the pandemic. Prince has been part of many of these conversations as well. So we are not begging. Africa is large. Africa has a lot to give. So if you are leaving this conference today in thinking, oh, I don't know how to do this, I'm still going to be a beggar, throw that mindset in the loo, flush it, let it be gone. Don't just throw it in the bin, because you might just take it out and not have the discipline to leave it in the bin. You might just take it out again. Go flush it, let it be gone, so you can't take it out again. So Prince, we're in it for the long run. You know, I had challenges today to even be here, but I said, you know what, that is small to what we are doing here today. And I also want to thank everybody. Prince came to us from African Funding Africans, and Prince was sent to us as South Africans Connections on a digital platform. And what we did, we said, what do you want, child? Because he was a young man looking for answers, you know? And we all brought us together from around the world, and we said, let's do this. And since we've done this, when I spoke to him today as well, I said, don't worry about it. Look at this beautiful message that he just left for us. Like in Barbara's, the minister's office. He had this from 2021 when we started, yeah? Like he had it in his office as a motivation for him, for our youth as well. So we're not giving up. Yes, it is growing pains. It is not easy to put even something like this together. Prince and I have done 24 hours already. That was like our biggest challenge that we've done. But this is something that we can say we have moved the needle by now. And each and every person who has been here today, I also personally want to thank you. We are live on another platform. It is recorded. If you need to reach out to us, don't just keep this recording for yourself. Share it with your community. Share it with other people. There might be something in this entire few hours of conversation that someone else might need, where someone else might like to collaborate with you, you know? So sometimes we have this thing of, I'm taking something away from somebody else. Don't think like that. We are a large continent. We have a lot. So nobody's taking anything away from anyone else. So if there's something that you can take out of the recording that I've done, the recording that Prince and his team has done here, share it, share it, share it to the rest of other countries who couldn't be here today. Yeah. And thank you again, Prince, for just saying, you know what, we're in it for the long run. So we're not going to stop now. We just started. Yeah. Thank you.
Cornelia, I always I appreciate you. Just to say that the transcript of of Barrister Afam, I think that's a lecture actually. People would normally go pay for that course at school. So because when I saw it, it was so long, and I was like, this is what he put together within a short time. How much is this cost, sir? But thank you for giving us for free. So it could not fit in the chat room here. I was gonna put it here because it couldn't fit in the chat. It's too long. Just keep your eyes on our LinkedIn page. I would please I encourage you to go follow us on our LinkedIn. It's on of just One Africa Forum. You'll see us there. You see our logo and everything. One Africa Forum. Keep your eye on our LinkedIn page. Currently, we have a publication running for every week, once a week. It's dropping. It's talking about Africa and different angles in Africa every week. I'm going to put Barrister Afam's message right on one of those Mondays. So I'm not going to tell you when. So if you don't go follow us, that's yours. One of these Mondays, it's just gonna drop. All right. So I'll email it to you and as a newsletter, but that will be you expecting it. That it will come to you so easy. Go follow us on LinkedIn. Maybe even before any of this current one running would drop, or even after it. But just follow us on LinkedIn and you will get it. And yeah, thank you again, Barrister Afam. And to other speakers who are not here, if you can reach them, if they have their transcript, let's send it. Let's put it. These are some of the materials that we have to send out as proof to say, this is what you missed. You can read it now, but you should have been there to ask questions. You know, should have been there to be a part of it. So thank you again, Barrister Afam. I don't know if anyone has anything. Mr. Walter, are you there? Barbara, are you there? And then we can call it an evening. It's been really a productive one.
In the absence of nothing, we want to use this occasion to wish my dear wife, she is online. Yesterday was her birthday. I want to wish her many happy returns. She's also a lawyer. I want to say thank you for supporting.
Happy birthday.
She joined us from United Kingdom. So I'm grateful, my love. Thank you for the support. Thank you, Mr. Prince, and thank you every participant. Thank you to every participant. I'm grateful.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, ma'am. Happy birthday, ma'am. And thank you so much for borrowing us him, or how do you say it now? Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So thank you. We appreciate you again. It's so hard to say goodbye. You know, you can see how, but this happens more often. We'll do this as often as possible. The African Youth Summit is an annual event, but that's not the only thing. We have an African Youth Symposium. We have the African Youth Summit. We just had, and that symposium usually happens in the first quarter of the year. That symposium is like a roundtable. We bring especially different community-based organizations together, you know, to come tell us what they're doing in their various communities and their challenges. So it's a symposium as it stands. That's what we do in the first quarter of the year, so that we can also have an idea of what the year looks like. And then we have this summit. We have the Global Youth Conference. We have the African Youth Conference at the end of the. So it's a lot of things that we do. We'll keep knocking on your doors. Please keep your emails and your phones doors open. We'll reach out to you. I have to say, okay, we're good. So no hands up. Thank you again, Barrister. Here you are. I really appreciate you. Thank you for all the effort you put in to make this work. You were on my heels. I won't lie to you. You were on my heels. Yo, there were times where I had to rush home to make sure I respond to that message. Otherwise, so thank you again, Barrister. Here you are. I really appreciate you. So thank you. It's really a good time. I mean, this is beautiful. Thank you, and I'll call it an evening now. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.